You got a message for John Idarola?
Nerd.
Tell him to be nice to me.
Vertigo? Not very good.
The guy! All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Ugranic is sparing with you guys on the online news show. So we have good news on Ukraine. Maybe we might be going towards peace, but are we? Are we? We'll talk about it. Right. Meanwhile, we're going towards war in Venezuela. Okay.
Yes, I mean that's exactly what the American people need, right? Another war.
Yes, I mean you can't begin to close up a couple of wars without starting a new one, right? So what would the military-industrial complex do? How would they make trillions off of the innocent American taxpayers? All right, and then, but speaking of war, lots of war throughout. Marjorie Taylor Greene versus Donald Trump continues. What are Marjorie Taylor Greene's plans going forward? That's an open question. And then Netanyahu and Naftali, Bennett, another very right-wing Israeli official, at war over Epstein's involvement with Israel. They seem to, everybody in Israel is discussing about how Epstein was involved with Israel. But in America, you're not allowed to discuss it because, of course, then you would be smeared by mainstream media as an anti-Semite, which is later going to be lead us to ask the question of, is all of Israel anti-Semitic? Okay, because I'm just using mainstream media logic. So we'll get to all those stories and more because we got a hell of a show ahead for you guys. All right, Anna, what are we starting with?
Starting with Caracas. Let's do it.
With the designation of that cartel associated with Maduro, does that mean that the US government can target Maduro's assets or infrastructure inside Venezuela?
It allows us to do that, but we haven't said we're going to do that. And we may be having some discussions with Maduro.
Is there anything you're ready to rule out at this point? Are you ruling out US troops on the ground?
No, I don't rule out that. I don't rule out anything.
President Donald Trump has moved the United States even closer to a potential hot war with Venezuela by designating Venezuela's president, Nicolás Maduro, the leader of a foreign terrorist organization. Now, Maduro's allies are also now classified as terrorists, giving the Trump administration a little more authority to go after Maduro militarily. Now, before we get to the details, including how exactly the American people feel about a potential regime change war in Venezuela, and hint, it's not good. Cenk, your 2 cents?
Yeah, what are we, nuts? What are we going to a war with Venezuela for? So this violates every promise Donald Trump made. I want you guys to see how far along we are on the war path and come back and discuss how's it gonna affect them politically here at home.
Now, the alleged terrorist designation was given specifically to what is referred to as Cartel de los Soles. And if you're wondering, what is that cartel? I haven't really heard much about it. It's because it's not an actual specific cartel. In fact, it's a phrase that experts say is more a description of allegedly corrupt government officials than an organized crime group. In other words, Venezuelans use the phrase to refer to all forms of corruption within the government. It's not an actual drug cartel. And as we know, what's happening right now between the United States and Venezuela is not over narco terrorists. It's not about drug trafficking. If you're actually concerned about the drug overdose deaths that are obviously destroying lives and families in this country, it has to do with fentanyl. Fentanyl does not come from Venezuela. It comes from China and it's funneled to the United States through Mexico. Now, Venezuelans began using this term back in the 90s to refer to high-ranking military officers who had grown rich through drug running. But as corruption expanded in the country, basically it started to be used as a way of referring to all sorts of government officials and all sorts of public servants like police officers and the like as corrupt, right? So that's what it's really about. Now, as the State Department tries to classify this loose network of corrupt politicians as a literal cartel, they claim that Cartel de los Soles, by and with other designated foreign terrorist organizations, including Tren de Aragua and Sinaloa Cartel, are responsible for terrorist violence throughout our hemisphere, as well as for trafficking drugs into the United States and Europe. Again, just to repeat myself for the billionth time, Venezuela is not a major player in trafficking drugs into the United States. However, they are known for smuggling drugs, particularly cocaine, into Europe. I would venture to say Trump is not all that concerned about that, but he is interested in a cover story to justify a potential hot war between the United States and Venezuela in an effort to overthrow Nicolás Maduro. I've got more details, but Cenk is chomping at the bit, so go ahead, Cenk.
So real quick, I just want to give you a sense of the absurdity of this. So it's like saying that money in politics in America is a cartel, or the establishment is a cartel. Okay, look, you're gonna get some sympathy from me. They do act like gangsters. But really, if we called the establishment terrorist, what would that mean? Who's in the establishment and what do we do with that? So you can see how absurd this thing is and how desperate they are to come up with a fake excuse for going to war when we all already know this is largely about oil and Marco Rubio's personal beef with Venezuela.
I don't even think it's about oil, Cenk, because look, Maduro made abundantly clear to Trump, this is weeks and weeks ago, I will give you whatever you want. You want access to the oil? I'll give you access to the oil. I just don't want to go to war. And Trump's like, yeah, I know he said that. I don't care.
So so you're saying since oil lobby has been removed from the equation,
yes,
because they'll get what they want, all that's remaining is Marco Rubio hating Cuba and hence hating Venezuela, plus the military-industrial complex always gets rich from war.
Very likely.
So those are the two main factors left. But what is not a factor is a made-up cartel called the corruption in Venezuela.
Exactly, and by the way, I should note that up until last year, the label of foreign terrorist organization had been reserved for actual foreign terrorist organizations like ISIS or Al-Qaeda, who apparently now are totally fine with the United States, and in fact will get invites to the White House, as we learned with a former Al-Qaeda terrorist who's now the leader of Syria. I'm supposed to pretend like all those terrorist acts that he engaged in, including against our own soldiers and military in Iraq, never happened. Okay, sure, as long as Israel's happy. But anyway, and by the way, there is currently a militant group in Gaza, okay, that's led by a guy by the name of Abu Shabab, who has ties to ISIS, that Israel, with the permission of the United States, is currently arming. Why are we arming someone who has ties to ISIS? Yeah,
what about Al-Shabaab? You think he's gone?
Abu Shabab.
Abu Shabab.
Al-Shabaab is a separate terrorist organization.
Okay,
yeah.
You think Shabab is gone? No, he's still here.
Say no to Shabab, yes to kebabs, okay? That's the way to go.
So guys,
American way.
Again, more details in a sec. But as you're seeing here, what's new about this story or about these type of stories is now it's being revealed, right? Before mainstream media would just go along with this and be like, oh, Venezuela has terrible problems with the cartels and maybe weapons of mass destruction or whatever, etc. And they would just lie us into war wholesale. But now the truth is coming out in 1,000 different directions, left, right, and center. And so it's much harder for them to lie us into wars. So what they'll have to do instead, if they choose to go down this path, is just go, oh, we don't care. We're just gonna go to war even though we said we were anti-war and even though we obviously have no justification at all.
Now look, in defense of your point about oil, there was an easy way to obtain the oil, which is, okay, make a deal with Maduro diplomatically. Maduro's willing to give the whole pie away. But why would you do that when you can make the defense contractors rich, risk the lives of our soldiers, and attempt to oust Maduro and then obtain the oil? In fact, in defense of the point that you made earlier, Cenk, on Fox today, Representative Salazar says, quote, we're about to go in, meaning about to go into Venezuela. We need to go in. Venezuela for the American oil companies will be a field day. Just saying it out loud. So all the Trump supporters who really bought his line about how this is about narco traffickers, can you just at least be honest with yourselves and with the rest of the American people? This is not about narco traffickers. Trump didn't care about drug overdose deaths in America in his first term. Biden didn't care about drug overdose deaths in America during his one and only term. And there's no way in hell Trump gives a damn in his second term. That's the reality of the situation. If one thing should be abundantly clear to the American people right now, especially with the backdrop of everything that's been going on with Israel, it's that our government, regardless of whether it's run by a Democrat or Republican, doesn't give a damn about you. They never do anything for you. What they're doing is in order to line the pockets of their lobbyists, of their donors, of themselves. That's all this is. It's like a looting competition.
Yeah, another thing that I love is now with our members, I can't tell who's on the left and who's independent or lean right. Mattman63 on YouTube wrote in, give us your tired, you're hungry, your oil rights. Okay, that is our new slogan. But really, at this point, that kind of criticism can come from the right or the left, because the right doesn't want to go to war for ExxonMobil either.
What happened to energy independence, Cenk? What happened to energy independence? Oh, we're gonna drill, baby, drill. And America's gonna be energy independent. No more wars. We don't need to go to wars. We have all the oil we need. What happened?
And in fact, we are #1 in producing oil and energy in the world, and we are under Trump. So there's absolutely no need for this, because as you all now are beginning to realize, now the veil of mainstream media is beginning to end, is that we don't ever go to war for the American people. We go to war for different donor classes: oil, military industrial complex, Israel, different sets of lobbies force Americans to go and die in wars, and certainly to pay for all those wars.
Now, as has been reported, the military buildup off the coast of Venezuela has been significant. So in addition to strikes on boats that have killed dozens of people extrajudicially, the US military has amassed more than a dozen warships and 15,000 troops into the region as part of what the Pentagon has branded Operation Southern Spear. Trump has been briefed by top officials on a range of options for action inside Venezuela, including strikes on military or government facilities and special operations raids. The White House also proposed that US military planes drop leaflets over Caracas in a psychological operation designed to further pressure Maduro to step down, timed possibly to Sunday to coincide with his birthday, and that's according to what the Washington Post is reporting. Now, how do Americans feel about this? Well, looks like a lot of people voted for Trump because they believed him when he said that he wouldn't start any new wars. And now that it looks like he is poised to start a new war, they're not so happy about it. Let's look at some of the polling here. A new CBS News poll found that 70% of Americans oppose military action against Venezuela. Only 30% would be in favor.
And that number
that's
is
CBS
preposterous.
News.
Why would 30% be in favor? The only reason is that 30% watches media that tells them, dangerous terrorists, we're bringing in fentanyl who's gonna kill your grandmothers, being brought in by Venezuela, kill all the terrorists. Come on, guys, is it Melania who says be better or be best?
Be best.
Yeah,
right,
okay, be way, way better than this. Best is a stretch.
So most Americans do not see Venezuela as a threat to national security. They don't even see Venezuela as an enemy, right? So let's take a look at this. Only 13% see Venezuela as a major threat. 48% say minor threat, and 39% say not a threat at all. Then you move on to the next data point here. The poll also found that 86% of independents and 64% of Republicans say Trump needs to actually explain his policy regarding Venezuela. So big ups to the American people. It looks like across the board, they're not really buying what Trump is selling here. They want a better explanation. And again, they're just not believing what Trump is saying, because the story, by the way, changes depending on which day it is. And it just doesn't really make any sense. The math isn't mathing when it comes to Trump and the claims that he's making about Venezuela and the threat that they pose to the United States. Now, some Republicans are even trying to warn Trump that the American people are not interested in a regime change war in Venezuela. Senator Rand Paul happens to be one of them, and he argued just yesterday that military action against Venezuela would fracture the Republican base even more than it's already fractured. Take a look at that.
But I think once there's an invasion of Venezuela, or if they decide to re-up the subsidies and the gifts to Ukraine, I think you'll see a splintering and a fracturing of the movement that has supported the president, because I think a lot of people, including myself, were attracted to the president because of his reticence to get us involved in foreign war.
He also accused the Trump administration of pretending as if we are at war to do what they want. When you have war, the rules of engagement are lessened. I don't think there are any rules at all at this point. I don't believe in rules because none of the rules are followed. None of them are valued, especially when it comes to alleged international law. Even when it comes to rules of engagement that the United States purports to believe in, all of it is fake. All of it is made up. That's just the reality of the situation. I think the last 2 years makes that abundantly clear. I think the last decade, 2 decades has made that abundantly clear.
Yeah, so let's talk about the political consequences, which is Rand Paul's alluding to. In the old days, if you said, hey, we're going to likely going to go to war over a confluence of donor interests. So for example, look at the places where we threaten war: Iraq, Venezuela, and Iran. So we've already done Iraq. We threatened, we already bombed Iran, and we bombed boats off Venezuela, threatening more. And the places that are also dangerous and terrible that we do not threaten war against, like North Korea or even Syria. There'll be a little bit of bombing to help Israel, but not a full-scale invasion of Syria.
Yeah, we just armed terrorist groups. Yeah, that's all we did.
So right,
yeah.
But we're not threatening boots on the ground in Syria, et cetera. So when you look at that, what you see is crystal clear, okay? Which is, if you have a lot of oil, well, ding, 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 we've got, like in the slot machine, 777, war, because then you got the oil interests, oftentimes the Israeli interests. Believe it or not, here Israel's also implicated, talking about how Venezuela is helping with the Hezbollah. I don't know if that's made up and just to rile up the Israeli lobby, like, oh, you better, or this driven by the Israeli lobby. I don't know, but somehow they got involved in this, right? And then you got the military-industrial complex. So when all three line up, we're going to war. So now when I used to say that in the past, the mainstream media would say, oh, conspiratorial nonsense. Lunatics think that we go to war over oil and defense contractors. And it's really interesting, ridiculous. Now, it's completely flipped. If you're a schmuck who goes around going, no, I bet oil is not relevant in this equation, people think you're kind of an idiot, super naive at best. But who really thinks, oh, no, it could have been Paraguay or Venezuela. It's just random that Venezuela happens to have the largest oil reserve in the world. Come on, you really gotta be super low IQ or a mainstream media reporter to believe that. So now, how's it gonna play out for him? Well, look, on the one hand, I look at these Trump voters, the Republicans, and 36% say, no, that's okay, Trump doesn't have to explain anything. If Trump says it, I say Trump, okay? Ooh. On the other hand, holy cow, 64% of Trump voters go, no, he's gonna have to explain this because I don't know what this is and I don't think I like it, okay? If he's at a point where he might lose 2/3 of his own voters, let alone 86% of independents, right? That means this is not a winning political issue. It's a massive loser as a political issue. So now Trump usually gets his way out of that by just bullying everyone. Oh yeah, Rand Paul's a tiny little guy. I hate him, he's stupid. He's a rhino. Republicans love war. Oops. No, wait, that's not what you were saying earlier, brother, right? And so Marjorie Taylor Greene's a traitor. Yes, we do everything Israel asks us. Otherwise, you're a rhino. Nah, that stuff's not flying anymore, right? And here you see it in the numbers crystal clear. So if they go and do this incredibly dumb war for no damn reason at all, other than to make their donors rich, what's going to happen is a massive backlash. I mean, the minute that thing gets messy, I mean, maybe they get in and out somehow, whatever, right? They did like they did with Iran. Oh, don't worry about it. It's a mini war. It's a 12-day war, right? But if it gets messy in the least bit, then Rand Paul's gonna win that debate within the Republican Party, let alone independents, let alone Democrats.
Good,
So
I hope he does.
Yeah, this is gonna be an epic disaster for Trump.
When we come back from the break, we'll move over to a different foreign policy nightmare, and that is the ongoing war in Ukraine. The Trump administration is proposing a peace deal. Will Russia and Ukraine accept it? And there's a wrinkle in the story involving corruption in Ukraine that you should all know about. So stick around for that and more. We'll be right back.
All right, back on TYT. Let's go to our beautiful members. Tap says, is this mic on? No, that's part of their handle. Says, happy Monday. Yesterday was my 54th birthday and I had to work. So today is my first day to sort of celebrate. I choose to be here with the TYT Army. Much love to you all. No shout outs needed. Nevertheless, happy birthday. Okay, love that you're here. Chocolate Addicted Dragon says, happy Monday main show. Dragons, I'm thankful for Justice Dragon, Salt Dragon, and the rest of the dragons that populate the TYT crew. We appreciate you, thank you. Beverly says, love your look today, Anna. And Jenks left tricep of fury adds, Anna looks like she's going to commit a heist of some sort with her Catwoman motif.
I'm gonna steal your hearts.
Oh, okay, I didn't see that one coming. That was pretty good, okay.
I feel like I'm looking pretty plain today. I'm wearing a black turtleneck.
No, you've got a little bit of either cat burglar, that's a good one, or I'm about to do a much larger heist in Silicon Valley. Okay.
Oh yeah, that blonde chick that did the fake blood test thing, right?
Yeah.
What was her name again?
Yeah.
All right, we've both forgotten.
Okay, we'll remember it in a second.
I should have done a different hairstyle.
No, you look great. Okay, Don Dada Dragon says, Bank of America has done more harm to Americans than Venezuela has. Look up, yeah. When are we gonna invade Bank of America? Nerd Ferguson says, so by this logic, we can go to war with the terrorist organization, the inflation. Sweet, problem solved. Okay, I like that.
Yeah, Elizabeth Holmes, that was her name.
Okay, Elizabeth.
Or is her name, I think she's still around.
Yep, Elizabeth Holmes. Dirge says, remember how Trump thought it was crazy we didn't steal Iraq's oil? Yeah, right? And so now he's like, of course, we go to Venezuela, we steal the oil. That's the point of a war, right? You take the other country's stuff and go, we're bigger than you.
The mark of true energy independence.
Yeah. Boomer Dragon Cat says, hoping Thanksgiving can brighten my outlook, feeling very black-pilled these days.
Same.
Okay, and black-pilled and black-sweatered over there.
But you know what gives me hope?
Yeah.
That people are waking up. Like that's what I've been latching onto. The fact that there are people, if you identify as a Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter. There are people on the other side of the aisle who significantly agree with you on the things that matter. So we gotta find a way to organize people to get them to fight back. Ordinary people, regardless of their political affiliation, to fight back against these policies that we both agree are trash.
In fact, I think we should do a whole show around it. Maybe we should at 8 o'clock Eastern, as we do every night. Oh right, bringing people together to fight back against the corrupt government. Okay, check that out every night right here at 8 o'clock Eastern. Donovan 8X says, Anna owning Josh Hammer and Big Al has been on replay for me all day. I can't get enough.
I can't, you're so right about something about me that I've been slow to catch on to. I can't hide how I feel. I had a look of disgust the entire time, and I wasn't trying to have a look of disgust.
Yeah.
Did you see my face?
Oh, I saw your face. Okay, but although I did not think, fix your face, I thought your face is fine.
I was like,
because if I'm talking to
the entire time.
Yeah, if I'm talking to Alan Dershowitz and he's like, the real problem is the victims. We should sue the hell out of them. You know what? And the real victims here were the perpetrators.
And then the rest of the time he's like trying to fix his camera.
Yeah.
Total mess.
And Anna the whole time, we'll put it up on tyt.com/press. The whole time I was looking at him like, oh. God, yeah, right? And no one blames you. Tom from Oz says, a corrupt administration calling out another one for the same type of corruption. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, John Ferrari, and Al Crawford 837. Thanks for joining, guys. We appreciate it. You're now part of the Young Turks and part of the show, and we love you for it. So it's panic time because Medicare enrollment is going to end December 7th. So you got to call 707-TYT HELP. If you're already in Medicare, you're about to go into Medicare, or you have family that's in Medicare, help them out. People are saving on average $1,100. Make sure you're on the right plan. If you are, they'll just tell you, you'll have perfect peace of mind. It's a free call, doesn't cost you anything. And in fact, it saves you per year, $1,100 on average. So it's really a little bit crazy not to call. Make sure you're on the right plan and save a lot of money if you're not. 707-TYT HELP, 707-TYT HELP. All right, Anna.
Well, let's check in with Ukraine because the war is raging on, but the Trump administration seems to have a plan to try to stop it, maybe as soon as this week. A massive corruption scandal in Ukraine could end Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's political career. And in the backdrop, you have President Donald Trump and his administration absolutely eager to get a peace deal signed between Russia and Ukraine. But again, Zelensky could be even more unpopular if he signs on to this peace deal. In addition to the fact that he is caught up in this crazy corruption scandal. Cenk, your 2 cents?
Yeah, so I read the whole 480-part peace plan. There's 2 problems with it. Other than that, kind of crossed fingers that it passes. So yeah, I'm curious what you think about it.
I think one of the rare instances in which Trump is correct is that Ukraine doesn't have the card. We don't have the cards. No one has the cards other than Russia. Russia is winning the war. So like, why are we pretending as though like all we need to do is wag our fingers and be like, you stop it right now, Vladimir Putin, and he'll stop.
Yeah, I want to get into that conversation a little bit more after you tell everybody the facts.
Sure.
But also, we have kind of an Israel-Palestine situation here because like the Palestinians might regret, for example, not taking the 2008 deal. And I don't want that to happen to the Ukrainians. So on the other hand, an invading country doesn't really get to have any moral standing. So it's complicated. Let's give you the facts and then don't worry, at the end, we'll solve it.
So we'll get to that corruption scandal that I referenced in just a bit. But first, let's get to the basics, and they are really just the basics of this proposed peace deal. So it was reportedly drafted by Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, who apparently and allegedly consulted with both Russian and Ukrainian officials. Also included in drafting this proposal was Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, really the who's who of real winners when it comes to diplomacy. Now the plan has 28 parts and is honestly too long for us to get into the nitty-gritty and minor details of, but I'm just gonna do a quick summary of what you need to know about this proposal. So in this proposal, Ukraine's sovereignty would be confirmed. Ukraine would get security guarantees, which is something that they desperately want from both the United States and NATO. If Russia attacks Ukraine again, it will face a decisive military response from the United States and NATO. Okay, that's the security guarantee that's baked into this proposal. I think that's pretty damn good, honestly.
Yeah, so it's a tiny bit vague on purpose. It says that response will come from the transatlantic community, okay? So now the whole point of going to NATO is to have a security guarantee. So if they get an actual security guarantee without going into NATO, it kind of gets the job done on both sides because Russia wants to be able to tell its home audience, see, we prevented them from getting into NATO. And the Ukrainians want to be able to say, see, we got a security guarantee from America and Europe.
Yeah.
So that part I like, that's a good way of resolving a tough issue.
I agree, and in fact, Ukraine, this is what Russia really wants. Now, Ukraine wants the security guarantee in case Russia thinks about invading again, right? So this deal would give them that security guarantee. However, it also gives Russia what it wants in that Ukraine would be permanently banned from joining NATO.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good middle ground because you get the security guarantee of NATO without joining NATO.
Yeah, and I don't care if Ukraine's banned permanently. And by the way, newsflash, nothing's permanent. They could change it 12 years from now, 18 years from now.
That's very true,
right?
Yes.
And so, it's in the charter. So what? You change the charter, right?
That's true. Although that would be a provocative move.
Yeah, I don't want it.
And you shouldn't do it because it'll probably lead to more war.
Yeah, I don't want it, but I just want to say it's not a provision that's too onerous, in my opinion, for us or the Ukrainians. There are 2 other parts of the peace plan that I don't love. But also remember that Ukraine would also be in talks to go into the European Union and would immediately get the same status as if they're in the European Union. So they get the economic benefit of joining Europe without the technical NATO part of it, the military part of it. But again, they're getting the security guarantee. So that part is pretty good for Ukraine, if you ask me.
Yeah, look, Russia doesn't have to worry about NATO military exercises on its border. Right? It doesn't have to worry about that if this is the deal that ultimately gets signed. Here's some more details though. There would be a global effort to help rebuild Ukraine. As you can imagine, it's been just devastated by this ongoing multi-year war. And the United States in particular would help with rebuilding Ukraine's gas infrastructure. Now, sanctions will very gradually be lifted from Russia. Those economic sanctions didn't destroy Russia's economy as the United States had hoped, especially because Russia is aligned with the BRICS countries and was able to kind of skirt some of the damaging impact of those economic sanctions. But nonetheless, as part of this deal, the sanctions that the US and Europe have imposed against Russia would gradually be lifted. Now, Russia will state in law that it will not attack Ukraine or Europe, and Ukraine will permanently forfeit nuclear weapons, something that they actually did in the 90s, and I think that was a big mistake. They did it at the behest of the United States. Ukraine will hold elections in 100 days. So that's been another sticking point for those who have been critical of Ukraine. Although we all know that the lawmakers in Ukraine have passed laws ensuring that during wartime they will not be holding elections, an increasing number of Ukrainians are getting frustrated with the fact that this ongoing war has prevented them from engaging in a democratic process, especially if they're not happy with the way Volodymyr Zelensky has handled this ongoing war. Now, then there's the most contentious issue of all, and that's territory, of course. So let's take a look at this map. This is a graphic of Ukraine, or this graphic is a map of Ukraine from The Guardian. And the light red areas are controlled by Russia. The dark red areas have recently been taken over by Russia. So those tiny little red spots that you see, right alongside the light red, those are like the newly obtained regions or areas that Russia was able to take control of. Now, Kherson and Zaporizhzhia will be frozen at the line of contact, aka where troops are currently stationed under this peace deal, and Russia will forfeit the rest of the disputed territory it has captured. Likewise, Ukraine will forfeit the Russian territory they've captured, which will become a demilitarized zone.
But technically Russian.
And then the territories of Crimea, Luhansk, and Donetsk will now belong to Russia. So that is definitely the more provocative element of this peace deal. But going back to the argument that I made earlier, Cenk, if Ukraine and Russia don't agree to this peace deal, let's say Russia does, right? And I don't necessarily trust Russia because there have been other instances, previous instances, where they pretend like they're gonna accept the peace deal and then they pull the rug out from underneath Trump. So I would proceed with caution in trusting Russia when they say that they're warm to this peace deal. At the same time, let's say we're in a scenario in which Russia does accept it and Ukraine says no. Well, who are you to say no? You're losing the war.
Well, so here's where it gets super complicated, right? So one of our members, Boomer Dragon Cat, wrote in on TYT.com, Russia's economy is in tatters, the troops aren't even getting paid. A strong US would rip the rug right out from under Putin. So Kat and Anna, guys, I've now read so many things on both sides. I read the Russians are on the brink of economic collapse, to Russians are perfectly fine economically, and because of BRICS, etc., they've recovered, right? So, and I've heard, the Russians are in retreat, the Russians are on the march. So it's so hard to know what's propaganda and what's real news and what the current situation is. I'm not sure our government really knows, let alone the American public and us. Now, obviously the most telling part is who is gaining territory and who isn't. And right now, the Russians appear to be gaining more territory. The Ukrainians do have some areas that they took, right? But it looks like the Russians have regained the upper hand. So which leads me to some of my issues here, which is, yeah, you don't like the moral responsibility is on Russia completely, but unfortunately, with the way that the world is shaping up now, we now have a new world order. The old one that George H.W. Bush tried to put into place when Iraq invaded Kuwait was, you're not allowed to invade any sovereign country that didn't attack you, right? I like that a lot. But now the new world order is, if you're a larger country, especially if you have nukes and the other country doesn't, you're basically allowed to do whatever you want and kill as many of their people and take as much of their land as you want. But if you're a smaller country, you're not allowed to do any of that, okay? So that's what Israel did to Gaza. That's what Russia's done to Ukraine, right? So that's just a reality. And I hate that these wars have now started where the bigger country just swallows a part of the other country and goes, that's it, I'm keeping it now. And if you don't agree to the deal, the people that I've just slaughtered, if you don't agree to that deal, I'm gonna make the deal worse. I'm gonna kill more of you and take more of your land. Now, of course, the difference is with Israel, we're being made to pay for those atrocities.
We're paying for this too.
We're paying for this.
We're paying for everything.
But we're at least on the side of the good guys, the Ukrainians, who are trying to defend themselves against an aggressive colonial empire in the form of Russia.
I understand that. I understand the dynamics are totally different. We shouldn't give a single cent to Israel, period. But how long are we gonna continue funding Ukraine's failed defense?
Well, I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily
Jake,
call it a
let's be
failed
real
defense.
here.
But Anna,
let's be real here. $38 trillion in debt. Ukraine is losing more and more territory. Have you guys seen the videos? Look, what changed my mind about this entirely was seeing like literal elderly civilians in Ukraine getting snatched from the middle of the street by the authorities in Ukraine because they're forced to fight this war. And they go to the front lines, they die. I mean, this has already destroyed Ukraine in so many different ways outside of losing territory.
Okay, but Anna,
their male population is getting wiped out.
But Anna, I totally agree with you, and that's why this is so hard. But the Ukrainians don't want to stop. The Ukrainians, it's not like we're doing the Ukrainians a favor by saying that's it, stop the war now and give all that territory to Russia. They're furious about it.
Of course they're furious about it.
I know, so it's not like we're necessarily helping the Ukrainians by forcing this deal on them. It's complicated. So for example, if China were to go into a number of countries, right? They decide, forget it. Not only are we taking Taiwan, we're taking Vietnam and Malaysia, right? And we were told the Vietnamese, well, you're on a losing end of this war, the Malaysians, right? Well, how long can we help your failed defense? Are we just supposed to let China take them all, right?
But Jake,
so that's why it's hard, it's not easy.
So how long is it gonna go on? How long is the American taxpayer gonna be responsible for funding Ukraine's fight against Russia?
So now that gets to my opinion on this deal.
Go ahead.
Okay, so by the way, it also has a lot of economic benefits for Russia. It says you get a lot of some of the money that we froze goes towards rebuilding, but some goes towards economic deals with US and Russia that ties together more, mineral rights. Gas starts flowing again, so we get helped economically. Russia gets helped economically. Ukraine gets helped economically. So those are all good parts of the deal. Bad parts are giving up a ton of land. So 3 whole territories are gone, as Anna described. Parts of 2 others, and some areas get demilitarized zone, but they're technically part of Russia. Okay, so that's a ton of territory to give up. Second problem is it limits the size of the Ukrainian army. I don't think that's in anybody else's business how big Ukraine's army is.
Yeah, I agree with you on that.
Yeah, so those are 2 terrible parts of this peace resolution. Now, all of the things I said to Anna and you guys is in prelude to me saying, easy for me to say since I'm not a Ukrainian, but I think I would take the deal, okay? Number one, the deal might just get worse and worse the more you lose leverage in the military. I hate that that's true, but it is true. And look at what happened to the Palestinians. So look, a lot of those deals that the Israelis offered throughout the years were totally fake. They were meant to go, we offered you a deal. No, you didn't take it, that's it. We're back to occupying you, enslaving you, etc. right? But I think one of them was real, the 2008 deal by Ehud Barak. And since then, the Palestinians have lost more land and gotten more people killed. So as painful as these peace deals are, especially for the victims of the invasion, at some point you're better off taking it than not taking it. And so at this point, it's not my place to say how much territory they should give up, but from an outside perspective, I would try really hard to get a little bit more land and to remove the provision on the Ukrainian army and then take the deal.
Now, when it comes to Zelensky, though, there is something that kind of complicates this matter, namely the fact that his political career and popularity could really suffer as a result of accepting this deal. At least that's what the corporate media in the US says. So there are a lot of Ukrainians who want this war to end as well. They've seen far too many of their male family members get slaughtered in this ongoing war. So keep that in mind. That doesn't get reported much here in the United States, unfortunately. But at the moment, Zelensky really has no safe harbor. Without a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine, Russia will continue pushing further and further into Ukrainian territory. That has been the pattern. That will continue to be the pattern. There's no reason to believe otherwise. But if Zelensky accepts the deal, his political career could be over, which honestly, if you ask me, that's the least of my concerns. But you have to think about it from the aspect of the major player here, Zelensky, who ultimately gets to decide whether or not to accept this peace deal. So knowing what his ulterior motives might be is important in understanding this ongoing conflict. So there are two main reasons why his popularity could suffer. For one, according to the Wall Street Journal, not their editorial board, this is actually their straight news reporting. They report that the Ukrainians are not interested in making concessions to Russia. They claim that there could be a full-on military uprising if Zelensky puts his weight behind this so-called unpopular deal. Again, this is the Wall Street Journal's reporting. They also report that they spoke to a military analyst who visits the Ukrainian front lines, and this individual stated that forfeiting the cities of Donbass could lead to a crisis in civil-military relations. And apparently US officials are aware of the problem. During the negotiations this weekend, the Ukrainian side made clear to US officials that they are willing to start discussions from the current contact line and do not want to engage with Russian offers to swap territory. The Americans expressed understanding that territorial questions could stir social unrest or military protests in Ukraine. And then you have Zelensky's issues with corruption within the country and within his own government. So the Ukrainian president is already unpopular in the country due to this massive corruption scandal. So it has to do with his former business partner who recently got busted for stealing $100 million from Ukraine's state nuclear energy company. Zelensky has also been accused of conspiring to protect his deputy head of state from a corruption investigation back in 2020. And then just this past summer, Ukrainians protested en masse when Zelensky stripped Ukraine's anti-corruption agency of its independence. In fact, the protests were so large and so rowdy that the public backlash led to Zelensky reversing his decision.
Yeah, Ukraine has to prepare for what's next, because if their leaders say take the deal, but there's some sort of military uprising and they basically don't take the deal, then they have to be prepared to move on without us. So that whether you think that's the right thing or the wrong thing, for the purpose of this conversation, doesn't matter. Because what's gonna happen in America is if we do a peace deal and they say yes, and then their military backs out, the appetite for further funding of Ukraine is going to be non-existent. So they have to be, if they're gonna make that decision, however they make it, then if they were being rational, they would say, all right, yes, but how do we do this? How do we conduct this war and win this war without America's help? And that's gonna be super hard.
Final thing I'll end on is the neocons absolutely hate this peace deal, loathe it. The war hawks absolutely loathe this potential peace deal getting signed. In fact, I'm gonna go to graphics 7 and 8 here, starting with Senator Mitch McConnell, who says, Putin has spent the entire year trying to play President Trump for a fool. If administration officials are more concerned with appeasing Putin than securing real peace, I mean, what would you know about real peace, McConnell, please? Then the president ought to find new advisors. Rewarding Russian butchery would be disastrous to America's interests. How so? Like, how so? How like, don't put this, like framing this as a threat to the United States is ridiculous. You want to frame this as a threat to Poland, for instance? Okay, we're having a conversation. But don't try to scare Americans into thinking, oh no, we should continue supporting a war effort in Ukraine. No, please. Let me just read the rest. He also says that rewarding Russian butchery would be disastrous to America's interests, and a capitulation like Biden's abandonment of Afghanistan would be catastrophic to a legacy of peace through strength.
Oh, come on.
And I'll give you one more. The vice president of George W. Bush's Presidential Center wrote the following. The 28-point plan should be dropped and replaced with a simple 1-point plan: Russia, get out of Ukraine. Wow, really hard to understand how Iraq turned out to be such a debacle.
Yeah, and if you don't know, the neocons are animated about this for a couple of reasons. One, they love war. That's not surprising. Two, they think that this is depleting Russia and helps us. Although it helps us how, they never defined. So, if Russia is depleted, then Americans get higher wages? Lower drug prices? No, they never clarify that. And then the third factor, unfortunately, is since Russia is allied with Iran, Israel would love for that war to continue forever and ever and ever, and to have Russia greatly weakened and distracted so they can't protect their allies like Bashar al-Assad, a bad guy, but Russia was on his side. Russia was distracted by this war. Syria and Turkey decided, perfect, this is a great time to knock off
Israel and Turkey, you mean?
I'm sorry, Israel and Turkey, yes. Decided perfect time to knock off the Syrian government.
Yep.
And to bomb Iran because the Russians can't protect them.
That's exactly right.
So Israel wants us to keep going. The neocons want us to keep going. That's another good reason to not keep going.
When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about how our federal government is full of traitors and in fact does favors for traitors to this country. This story is amazing. We've got that, and why Mark Levin's stepson has an outsized role in influencing our foreign policy when we return.
All right, more comments from TYT.com members. Words in the Absurd lives up to his title, says the US military with its multi-billion-dollar arsenal is no match for Venezuela's bananas and pineapples of mass destruction. America must launch a preemptive strike now. Wait for it. I mean, absurdity has never stopped them before. Camp Corona Dad says 55% of Americans say, where's Venezuela? Danny Sam says, Anna, your face was totally appropriate.
Thank you.
Okay, I agree, Anna has an appropriate face. Voto Star says Moscow needs to be bombed back to the Stone Age. That would correct the problem there. No, it wouldn't, okay? Love you, brother, but bad idea. If that happens to Moscow, it probably happens to Washington, and round we go. And plus, there are tons and tons of civilians in Moscow, and they didn't do anything wrong either. But I don't know if you were being sarcastic or not. Pessimistic Progressive says, I got the TYT sponsors mixed up, and now I have mobile service through Chapter and Medicare from Andrew Yang. Okay, that's hilarious. Okay, for a pessimistic dude, you're a little optimistic and you're a little funny. Anyways, yes, if you want to get Medicare, you do it through Chapter, not through Andrew Yang. And if you want to do Noble Mobile, you do it through tyt.com/switch, which I'll tell you more about in a second. Peaceful Best Dragon says, my favorite thing today was, by the way, if you do both, you save about $2,000 a year. You're welcome. Okay, Peaceful Best Dragon says, my favorite thing today was hearing breaking points go on about how they can't get Marjorie Taylor Greene booked. Maybe Jen can help with that. Peaceful Best sent out an up always and always. Okay, in always. Okay, anyway. Breaking points are good, guys, and that makes sense for her, Marjorie Taylor Greene, to go on, and she should. So I'm exempting them from this. Am I enjoying the people who criticize us for having Marjorie Taylor Greene on, now scrambling to get Marjorie Taylor Greene on? Yes, I am enjoying that. Are they noticing that? No, of course they're not noticing that, right? Boomer Dragon Cat says Russia's economy is in tatters. The troops aren't even getting. Oh, I already read you that one. Little Mac McGee says, do you know the only people who matter? The Ukrainians. Why does nobody seem to realize this? And so long as they do not lose, they win. So long as they still fight, they win. Yeah, brother, but remember, of course, there's a lot of factors. Yeah, you could boil it down to that, but how are they gonna fight without American or maybe even European help? So it's a complicated matrix. Our hearts are with them, and now we gotta figure out, in using our brains, how to help them the best. Is the peace deal the best way to help them? Is more war the best way to help them? So that's the question at hand. Camp Corona Dad says the security guarantee for Ukraine sounds good on paper, but they had that in the Budapest agreement, and you know how that worked out. And the Ukrainians to believe the word of the US again, especially now that Trump has destroyed any global credibility we had, I'd be hesitant to agree on anything coming out of Washington, especially if it's just passing through on its way from Moscow.
We've been funding their war effort for several years to the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars. We're $38 trillion in debt. Like, what are we talking about here?
Yeah, but we did give them a security guarantee, as you've talked about in the past.
Do you want the US military to go fight Russia?
No, I do not. No, I do not.
I don't know, do we want to risk nuclear war? I mean, like, what are we doing? Like, how much is enough? I want to know that. How much is enough? How many hundreds of billions of dollars would be enough to help Israel, to help Ukraine continue losing this war?
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. I'm just gonna read one quick YouTube member comment. Carol Gosh 3663 said, I didn't think we had a problem with Venezuela. He owes us a huge explanation. This doesn't make sense. So I don't know if Carol's independent or not, or anti-Trump, pro-Trump, I don't know, right? But that's a super fair question. Wait, you said you were anti-war and now you'd like to declare war on Venezuela. At a minimum, that requires a huge explanation, right? No matter which side of the political aisle you're on. Okay, real quick, a note about our sponsors, Noble Mobile. Look, we got this fun little mug here. I don't know if you can see it on the table. Wait, now Noble, ooh. Okay, and TYT on the other side, I like it. All right, why? Because we're partners, we're now a little bit intertwined. Why? Because we believe in them so much. I know my bill was about $50. I'm sure a lot of your monthly bills with Verizon or AT&T are about $50. Your phone doesn't switch, your number doesn't switch, your contacts don't switch. Literally nothing switches other than you going online for 5 minutes and going, I'd like to be with Noble Mobile and pay way less. That's it. There's no SIM card, there's no nothing, okay? TYT.com/switch. Plus on top of that, you get money back if you don't use all your data. So there's tons of ways to save. This also saves you about $500 to $1,000 a year. So no reason not to do it. I did it, I love it. TYT.com/switch. All right, Anna.
All right, let's move on to our next story.
Who is David Milstein? He is the senior advisor to Ambassador Huckabee.
Oh, did he work for Ted Cruz?
Yes.
Yes, he worked for Ted Cruz. Okay.
And he is the stepson of your best friend, Mark Levin.
He's Mark Levin's stepson?
Yeah. Yes.
He's working at the State Department?
Correct.
Interesting. So David Milstein is a political guy working now for Mike Huckabee in Jerusalem, and he was going through your lines.
Correct.
Okay.
In fact, Mark Levin's stepson, David Milstein, was present for US Ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee's meeting with a literal traitor to the United States, and that's of course Jonathan Pollard. Interesting. So you have this guy who's literally just an aide to Mike Huckabee, having an outsized role and influence over US foreign policy. And nothing makes that clearer than the fact that he's the one who got the gentleman that you saw on that screen talking to Tucker Carlson fired because he didn't go along with the Israel first policies that Milstein was pushing for in the State Department. So I'm gonna give you some more details on that in just a moment, but before I do, Cenk, your 2 cents?
If there is a real American government that represents the American people at some point, I think these guys might be in significant legal trouble. Some of these folks literally seem to be working for Israel and not America. And if they're inside the American government and they're making decisions in favor of a different country, that is a crime and a very significant one. So let's find.
Is it? Because after learning about Huckabee's meeting and the fact that the White House defended Huckabee having this clandestine meeting with a traitor, someone who was convicted of espionage, okay? He had a meeting with that guy, and the White House defended him.
even though he did it behind the White House's back and behind the CIA's back. So the reason why that's the case is and that is a spectacular example of showing that Israel definitely controls our government.
100%.
Definitely.
How can
if
anyone
that happened
deny
with
it?
any other country, oh, I met with a traitor who was actually gave our secrets to Venezuela or to Cuba or to Russia or to China, and I did it behind the president's back, that brother's arrested immediately.
Executed.
Okay, well, okay.
No, I'm sorry, but I mean, you have Pete Hegseth right now going after Mark Kelly because of the video that those 5 Democrats put out urging the military to not listen to Trump. They shouldn't have done that. I don't think that was the right thing to do. I'm just keeping it real. Okay, but Hegseth is now thinking about going after Mark Kelly specifically for potential espionage. Homeboy, our ambassador to Israel just met with a literal traitor to the United States, a convicted traitor to the United States. How about focus on that for a minute?
And in secret and inside the US Embassy. That man should have never darkened our doorstep ever again after betraying us more than almost anybody has, other than another Israeli spy, Robert Maxwell, who stole our nuclear secrets. What kind of an ally is this? And yet there are tons of people, as Anna's about to tell you, that are inside the US government who clearly appear to be working for the Israeli government. And by the way, any talk of execution is of course through official channels.
After conviction.
Conviction,
an official
treason,
sentence.
etc.
Yes.
And even then I wouldn't be in favor of it. Anna would, okay?
I would.
But guys, we're nowhere near that. What we're at is one day we should get control of our own government and see if these guys broke the law, because it looks ridiculous right now.
So let's talk about the traitor known as David Milstein, who's an aide to Mike Huckabee, US ambassador to Israel. So he actually made some waves a few months ago in September after Shahid Qureshi was fired at Milstein's behest. Tucker Carlson interviewed Qureshi about it, and we're gonna get to some of those clips because I think it provides some insight that's relevant to who actually controls our government here. It's not the American people. It turns out that it's a foreign country and individuals within our country who purport to be American citizens but seem to have far more loyalty to a foreign country as opposed to our own. And yeah, I am saying it, I'm saying it out loud. Now, Milstein, again, is a senior advisor to Huckabee. Prior to his current role, he worked with other Republicans, including Senator Ted Cruz, as you heard from that video earlier, and the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis. His influence has little to do with making the lives of Americans better. Let's be absolutely clear about that. And that should be obvious from the fact that he was part of that meeting between Huckabee and Pollard. But in addition to that, Responsible Statecraft published a pretty fascinating and detailed piece that exposed Milstein just last September, revealing that in an effort to strengthen US support for Israel, Milstein has confronted colleagues he viewed as insufficiently pro-Israel, removed content critical of Israel from press statements, as well as a major annual human rights report, and tried to get the US government to refer to the West Bank as Judea and Samaria, something that's completely made up by religious zealots, a controversial term often used by supporters of Israeli annexation, meaning land theft of the region.
Anna, real quick there.
Yeah.
It is official American policy that we want a two-state solution, and the Palestinians should have the West Bank and Gaza Strip. So it is arguable exactly the contours of the West Bank, especially in Gaza Strip, but that is official. So what he is doing there, Milstein, is he's going against American policy
as a traitor, yeah,
and he's doing it with language of the most extreme religious right wing of Israel.
Correct.
And so he is instituting Israeli policy instead of American policy. And I believe that's a crime. He's saying, no, we're going to go against American policy and we're going to manipulate the American government into supporting Israeli policy instead. That is a massive, massive problem.
Yeah, it sure is, but you wouldn't know it based on how our government behaves. So with that in mind, the whole Judea and Samaria designation was something that Shahid Qureshi, who's now been fired from the State Department, pushed back on because he knows what the official US foreign policy happens to be. So when he saw that language, he did push back on it, and he was met with some serious consequences. He talks about it with Tucker Carlson in this next clip.
He would push a certain agenda that was very aligned with Israel that I found very problematic. Now, in this specific example, because we're discussing the third example of why I was fired, was that he changed the stability line to, we commend Speaker Johnson for visiting Judea and Samaria. And it's designed to erase any Palestinian legitimacy that this is supposed to be.
Right. So the point is,
Israeli land.
By using those terms, they're biblical terms, they refer to regions described in what Christians call the Old Testament. And the point is to remind everybody that this land was promised by God to the Jewish people, to the Hebrew people, and that, you know, anyone who's lived there subsequently for the last 3,000 years has no right to it.
Right.
That's the point. But from a sort of government perspective, Judea and Samaria are not real places in that they're not
recognized,
not nation states, they're not provinces, they're not.
And
do they have clearly defined borders?
Not from my understanding. I think they do not. And that would increase. That would give you opens the door. It opens the door to more land grabs. You know.
And what would Israel be if it weren't for land theft? But nonetheless, Qureshi wouldn't exist, exactly. Qureshi removed the reference to Judea and Samaria and got reprimanded for it, even though Milstein is, again, just an advisor to Mike Huckabee. And eventually Qureshi got fired, which reinforced Milstein's power within the State Department as a literal aide to an ambassador to a foreign country. Okay, so Milstein, according to Responsible Statecraft, actually did get someone fired. A State Department official said, is he gonna find some way to throw me under the bus? So it has a chilling effect within the department, obviously. That's the whole point here.
That if you don't represent Israeli interests instead of American interests, you'll be fired by this rogue advisor to the ambassador. To be fair to Milstein, there was another assistant to the ambassador before this, in the first term of Trump, and he did the same role. He would block State Department releases. He would not, and conclusions and reports.
Yep.
He wouldn't even share them with the ambassador, and he wouldn't share it with the White House. He was unilaterally deciding no, Israeli interest above American interest, to the point where I won't even let you guys see what our own State Department has concluded about Israel and Palestine.
Right, including human rights abuses, that kind of stuff, yep.
And if you're blocking our government from getting facts in order to help another government, again, that is potentially a very serious crime.
Yeah. So let's get you some more information about what's been going on with this Milstein guy, again, Mark Levin's stepson in the State Department as an aide to an ambassador to a foreign country. So according to Qureshi, Milstein would even write memos in the voice of State Department Secretary Marco Rubio and even go around his higher ups in order to get what he wants. Take a look.
Like he would push in one occasion statements that were in the voice of Secretary Rubio, not even the spokesperson. And he drafted them, he would push them through and be like, I want this statement out. And
I want the statement out?
Yeah, like he would go through and be like, I drafted this is the statement I want. I would go through the process of clearing it, but he would fight for it. Like he'd be in the document, getting in arguments with people one by one in order to kind of overwhelm the process and get certain his agenda out there the way he wanted. And it's very difficult. You can
on what authority? I mean, that's pretty cheeky behavior for a guy who's an aide to Mike Huckabee, the former cable news host.
Call around the building and it was very consistent and persistent.
But he lives in Jerusalem.
He does.
In fact, one of the first things that Milstein did in his new role was launch his own review of the State Department's human rights report about Israel and the Palestinian territories. So the original version had criticisms of both Israel and Hamas's records on human rights, but Milstein made some edits, and those edits ensured that most of the focus was critical. Most of the focus that was critical of Israel was taken out, and the final version focused mainly on criticizing Palestinian groups and was only 9 pages long. The original version was 100 pages long. So think about how deep those edits were. And look,
and just real quick on that. the 100 pages were critical of Israel. He removed all of them. The 7 remaining pages were the context, 9, were the context of, yeah, Hamas also does bad things, etc., right? Which you should have in the report, right? So he made it seem like the only thing that was going wrong was how terrible and evil the Palestinians were as they were being slaughtered and starved to death, and omitted the 100 pages saying to the US government, it's actually the Israelis that are the problem. So he says, no, I don't want anybody else in the government or the American people to see that. I'm going to bury that on behalf of Israel. On behalf of Israel. Serious crime.
Yeah, but Mark Levin spends his days like obsessively posting about Nick Fuentes, who, has said things that are offensive and awful, but he is a 28-year-old streamer. So compare that to your stepson, okay, who is currently in a low-level position within the State Department, but is literally engaging in what I believe is espionage. He's going against US foreign policy, official US foreign policy on behalf of a foreign country. I think that's more problematic. I think he has more of a negative impact on our country than the streamer does. Just saying.
So, but Mark Levin is such a deep racist. He doesn't think Palestinian lives are worth anything.
He doesn't think American lives are worth anything.
He's literally said, both him, Randy Fine, have talked about slaughtering everybody in Gaza. And so to them, like, oh, you're betraying America on behalf of Israel to commit a larger genocide and murder more Palestinian children. Mark Levin's like, where's the question? Of course, that's why my stepson, I'm so proud of him, right? The way that he's captured the American government on behalf of Israel, there's nothing that makes Mark Levin happy.
He's a pig and he's disgusting. But so if you're wondering, well, why don't higher level officials within the State Department just tell this Milstein kid to shut the F up? Well, Qureshi gives us some insight into that as well. Take a look.
Now, I know that you say he's Mark Levin's stepson, but I mean, nobody takes Mark Levin seriously and no one watches his show, and like, he's just not a real person. He's like an angry old man on Twitter. Who cares whose stepson he is? Like, why doesn't anyone say, hey, tell that Milstein kid to shut the fuck up?
People would acknowledge the pushiness, but that's all I really got.
No one ever told him to stop?
It was difficult to say no to him on a lot of occasions.
Why?
So people did say no, but it took a lot of effort. So from my vantage point, I'm wondering, why would someone have so much influence? And why are people almost tiptoeing around it, right?
It sounds like they were.
Right, and you would have to take a group effort of like, okay, this bureau and this bureau don't want to put this statement out, and then it would go away, but that was it.
We don't live in a sovereign country, and if you don't have a problem with that, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah, so look, guys, it's not a complicated mystery. Israel controls our government, period, and they do it through agents like, and I don't know that he's technically an agent. That's for legal purposes later, and I hope that one day we find out and it's adjudicated through the courts. But through assets, agents, and just people who are Israel first, and they think, like Jonathan Pollard, they think, and Pollard just said this, I'm Israel first and always will be. America first is useless to me and is an anathema. He says America first is terrible. You should, and Jonathan Pollard asked Jewish Americans, by the way, he doesn't speak for Jewish Americans and he's a traitor, but that you should all betray America for Israel, and apparently some of them are. And I don't mean Jewish people, I mean these Israel first monsters. And it's not just Milstein. As I mentioned earlier, there was a guy named Aryeh Lightstone, who was the chief of staff for David Friedman, our former ambassador under Trump in his first term. And Lightstone was doing similar things, blocking State Department reports, not letting the ambassador see it, not letting other people in the government see it, removing all things critical of Israel. Who are you? Who do you work for? Why are you allowed to do these things? And again, any other country, if there's an agent, asset, or just someone who's loyal to another country who's going around going, no, I'm not gonna let you see any of the reports coming out of the Ukraine war that are critical of Russia. I will only send reports critical of Ukraine, and I will block anything from getting to our ambassador, getting to our State Department, getting to the president that harms Russia's interests, or fill in the blank, any country, China's interests, Saudi interests, etc. That person would be investigated legally, criminally, right? But now there's so many of them inside our government, and everybody's threatened by them, bullied by them, to the point where they're like, well, okay, Israel, of course, should be served first before we get to America at all. If American interests should be all directed towards Israeli interests. There's a giant problem with that. And if you're in mainstream media and you're like, well, okay, all those facts are true, but no, I'm gonna cover it up on behalf of Israel. No, there's something wrong with you. We're not the problem, you're the problem. If you told the American people these facts, they'd be enraged. That's why mainstream media is like, no. It's an Israeli protection racket. This is insane. These are established facts. There's no question about them. It's an established fact that Epstein worked with Israel. Mainstream media is covering it up to no end. Why? You're not in the news business, that's clear. All right, last thing is, Ambassador Liu worked for Biden, and he was our ambassador to Israel then. Well, this one he's doing it through official channels, so he's not breaking any laws, etc. But he would prevent his own staff from sending reports that were critical of Israel to the White House. So he's like, nope. So all of our ambassadors to Israel actually work for Israel. Their chief of staffs and their assistants and advisors work for Israel even more. And half the freaking government seems to be working for Israel. No, whenever we have an honest government, all these folks need to be cleaned out. And what I mean by cleaned out is an actual investigation, and one that's only factual and based on evidence. But if we find out that you work for Israel, yeah, severe legal criminal consequences. But we're nowhere near that, guys. Right now, they're totally in charge. They're in charge of mainstream media, they're in charge of our government, and anyone who objects is called an anti-Semite, a conspiracy theorist, etc. Even though we're the ones with the undeniable facts, and they have such garbage as, no, it's okay because they're a special ally.
No, they're not. They have been, this alliance has been to the detriment of the American people and our whole way of life, our freedom, our sovereignty. I think that's pretty clear at this point. We got to take a break, we'll be right back.
They failed us. And if you're not angry about that, Michael, and any of you out there, then you're damn wrong, because you should be angry. Young Turks.
It was genuine. He was mad. Cenk Uygur, known online as one of the Young Turks, isn't afraid to throw some punches.
3, 2, 1, fade up.
Cenk the Turk Uygur.
What kind of TV station is this? The whole point is for me to yell and scream and tell you what I think.
It was right out of like Wayne's World.
This guy on this little rinky-dink website is speaking truth to power.
We've been averaging 600,000 views a day, beating most of the cable shows in America.
We're the largest online news show in the world.
We're celebrating our 1 billionth view.
Television, we're coming.
More politics ahead with Cenk Uygur.
He knew that the MSNBC opportunity was an experiment.
And Phil and host beat CNN and headline news combined. At some point, they want to give me a show.
Every single year, that comes out of our paycheck. We put it in, and you're saying we were suckers.
When you, as a host, tells someone you're interviewing to shut up, that's going to raise a red flag.
That guy needed a tall glass of shut up juice.
If President Obama's doing the wrong thing, I'm not going to tell you that he's doing the right thing so I can, quote, support him.
He says to me, you won't believe the meeting that I just had.
The head of MSNBC talked to me.
And they want him off the air.
Cenk took an incredible risk.
We're supposed to challenge the government. That's the role of the media. The Democrats and the Republicans are here to screw you. And who on the air is saying it?
I wouldn't have done what he did.
That if I'm going to be a talk show host, I should be the biggest talk show host in the country. I don't think anyone else does it better. I don't think anyone's even close.
Before you know it, I'll be back on your TV doing a national show. I guarantee it.
Magic. It's showtime. And say 45 minutes. I'm hosting today. Now, I know what you're thinking, Jay, your face is already perfect, but you know what? I still need to apply some makeup. I went through this process, right? A few years ago, when I realized that I was gonna have to wear makeup on the show. I had to go through like finding out what my undertones were. You guys know what those are? I got my MAC Cosmetics. It says SPF 15 foundation, broad spectrum. But apparently what I have is red undertones, and I think pores are not supposed to be seen. I need all these things to be confirmed for me. These sponge things don't work for me. You gotta use your hands. This idea. That's how the magic really happens. So we're gonna go through a tutorial how to make the magic happen from beautiful to beautifuler. Let's go. I've already been moisturized. That's the first thing. But moisturization already happened. We go raw. All hands. Pick up. Couple streaks. This is the guy we were putting on makeup. Look at that, dots. There's some shiny points that generally happen. First of all, here we go. You dust here. I'm putting way too much, but you dust. Oh, get the excess off. You don't want chunky powder. There's like a T-zone, I think, right? Mine is a double T-zone. Because I went middle and another cross. Make sure your nose isn't all shiny. People get on you for it. You know, say, that's not a good point you made on there, JR. Your nose is shiny. You guys are picky like that sometimes. I think that's about it, fellas and ladies. See you guys next time. Bitsies.
You ever played quarters? After a workout, have some beers. I liked beer, still like beer.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Also, good enough day with Ray and Catherine Seldenwright. You guys are awesome. I love having you as part of the Young Turks. Anna's got more news for you.
I sure do. Let's get to it.
You know, in the Hebrew language press, people are sort of losing their mind about this and saying, you know, Netanyahu, you know, is so desperate to sort of distract from, you know, his other narratives that he's even willing to put forward stories from quote unquote anti-Israel news outlets. But this is very serious reporting.
I think what's so fascinating to me about this entire story is how the Israelis are currently feuding amongst themselves over whether Epstein was an Israeli asset. But the US media is ignoring all of this work.
Well, because the corporate media in the United States is controlled by a foreign country, and that foreign country, of course, is Israel. That's why they're not covering the fact that Jeffrey Epstein, it is now proven, had very cozy, close ties to the Israeli government. Even Benjamin Netanyahu is boosting that story, believe it or not, but not for the reasons that you would believe or think. Now, Jeremy Scahill, of course, one of the founders of Drop Site News, was discussing this insane fight that's taking place in the Israeli government and among, you know, Israeli politicians. Before I give you the details, your 2 cents, Cenk?
Yeah, so really interesting cast of characters here because Steve Bannon apparently was very good friends with Jeffrey Epstein, and he's involved in this story. But meanwhile, as everybody's been saying here, there's a raging debate in Israel about who put Epstein up to it. Meanwhile, here in America, they're like, that's anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. Then is all of Israel anti-Semitic?
I guess so.
Okay, so you see what liars our corporate media are, Anna.
So just to recap real quick, so Israel's current prime minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, boosted reporting that exposes Jeffrey Epstein's close relationship with the Israeli government. And now he's actually under fire from a different former Israeli prime minister who claims that Epstein had no connections to Mossad. No. Like, hey, idiot. Remember, we're supposed to be keeping this secret. You're not supposed to be making this public, but Netanyahu couldn't help himself. So on Friday, Netanyahu posted the following Jacobin piece without any comment. Let's take a look at a screenshot. So the piece is titled, Jeffrey Epstein claimed to have meddled in Israel's elections. Okay, so the Jacobin piece relies on reporting from Drop Site News. They've now published several articles using information from the Epstein files that were leaked or released to the public by the House Oversight Committee. Those documents show specific connections between Epstein and the Israeli government, including various deals that Epstein brokered on behalf of the Israeli government. So the Jacobin piece in particular mentions Dropsite News' extensive reporting on Epstein's connections to former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak and Mossad. The reporting again relies on these unveiled documents from the House Oversight Committee, and the article itself has to do with the emails between Epstein and Steve Bannon. So Steve Bannon is implicated in all of this as well, and you guys should just be fully aware of that. So back in 2019, when Netanyahu was serving as prime minister, Ehud Barak had launched another run for Prime Minister of Israel. At that point, Epstein's emails with Bannon made clear that Epstein was playing a role in, Barak's comeback as another term as Israel's prime minister. And here's what the transcripts indicate. So Jacobin cleaned up Epstein's strange punctuation for the purposes of clarity. I wanted to give you that warning, but here's what the emails indicate. Epstein says, "I'm dealing with Ehud Barak in Israel, making me crazy." Bannon responds, "Ehud, massive. Can we announce I'm his strategic advisor?"
So Bannon can't wait to work with the Israelis and make some money off of that. Interesting to note from Mr. America First.
Bannon also has hours and hours of footage from his interview with Epstein that's never been released.
Why hasn't it been released, Steve? That's awfully strange. I mean, you're complaining about the Epstein files being released. You have your own Epstein files. Why don't you release all of them unedited and let's see what Epstein was up to? By the way, also your conversations with Epstein. Oh, but you don't want to release those. Interesting.
So the conversation continues. Again, this is over email. Epstein says this will be a long campaign. Elections in September 17th. Lots to talk about. Bannon responds with, "This is brilliant move." So let me give you one more part of their exchange. Epstein says, "Thanks, only the first step. Now you can understand why Trump wakes up in the middle of the night sweating when he hears you and I are friends." Bannon responds, "Dangerous." I don't know what that means.
I don't know what dangerous means. I guess he's referring to himself and Epstein being a dangerous combo, but against Trump. So Steve Bannon really has a lot of explaining to do here.
Yeah.
Okay.
100%. So look, I think that Megyn Kelly's take on all of this is interesting. So Ehud Barak's connections to Epstein became a huge scandal for the prime minister after Epstein's arrest in 2019. Netanyahu capitalized on that scandal to bring down Ehud Barak's run for prime minister. Now let's fast forward to present day where Megyn Kelly responded to Netanyahu's post, posting that Jacobin piece. So I guess it's not anti-Semitic to ask if Epstein was an asset for Israeli intel. And we shouldn't just take Ehud Barak's word for it that he wasn't. Got it. Yeah, correct. They're gonna call you an anti-Semite anyway, Megyn Kelly. Like they're gonna call you an anti-Semite unless you toe the line perfectly and support anything and everything Israel does without asking any questions. Now, if you're willing to do that, great, you won't be called an anti-Semite. But if you're willing to ask questions as someone who purports to be a journalist, as someone who cares about the facts, the truth, yeah, you're gonna be called an anti-Semite. And you know what you should do with that claim, which is complete and utter BS? Brush it off your shoulder and move on.
And actually report the truth, but half the time she seems like she's covering up for Epstein.
She's straddling, not for Epstein, but for Israel. She does a lot of that.
Yeah, we're like, oh, the Epstein girls, was it really pedophilia?
Oh yeah, that was bad.
I mean, why are we doing that? Epstein's already dead. I mean, it's not like I don't think she has any connections to Ghislaine Maxwell. My guess is that Megyn Kelly was trying to minimize that as part of a coordinated effort. Alan Dershowitz did the same thing when debating Anna on counterpoints. And so I think that there's a Israeli talking point. Start to minimize what Epstein did because people are finding out we did it. And so if Megyn's putting out those talking points and they're calling her an anti-Semite anyway, she should really check her strategy because it isn't that great. That straddling isn't working for anyone, Megyn.
Now, former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett responded to Megyn Kelly in a quote post. So let's take a look at that. He says that The greatest propaganda attack. Remember, Israel's supposed to continue pretending as though Epstein had nothing to do with their government, even though there's now evidence that he absolutely did have a lot to do with their government.
I have more on that too.
Yeah, let me continue with his statement though. He says, until this moment, Netanyahu has not deleted the disgraceful post in which he shares an article that promotes the false conspiracy theory as if Israel and the Mossad operated the pedophile Epstein. Key media figures and influencers in the US and around the world are now relying on Netanyahu to lend legitimacy to lies against Israel and against, no one is making claims against Jews. Okay, you're making that up. Okay, these are claims about Epstein's relationship with a foreign government, and that's the government of Israel. No one said a damn thing about Jews, but they love to put that in there so anyone who questions Israel or their conduct is automatically thought of as an anti-Semite, and I reject that, but let me continue. He also says that Netanyahu is directly harming Israel's security and the security of Jews around the world. Well, Naftali Bennett, why don't you actually respond to the specific reporting that's come out? Several different reports showing that Epstein negotiated all sorts of deals on behalf of Israel. In fact, as the bloodshed was ongoing in Syria, Epstein hit up Ehud Barak and was like, yo, how about some more profiteering? There's a money-making opportunity here. Also reported by Drop Site News. Disgusting. Cenk, take it away.
Yeah, so I want you to understand what an enormous figure Epstein was inside Israel, and I'm gonna prove it to you. So you see him in the emails where the former prime minister, Ehud Barak, is kind of pleading with him to help him. But wait a minute, and you see so many other figures beseeching Jeffrey Epstein, and it makes sense because then you see him setting up a meeting with Vladimir Putin, the Mongolians randomly, etc., trying to procure cyber weapons for Israel. So he's this enormously powerful, pivotal player within Israel circles, and even former prime ministers and spies are beseeching Epstein. Okay. But remember, Epstein is not a public figure. It's not like he has media sway in Israel,
right?
And so he could affect the population or anything along those lines. No, he has enough power within the Israeli government that even former prime ministers come to him for help. Having nothing to do with media or public figures or the population. So he is unquestionably enormously connected to the Israeli government. So what are his goals? You see it all over the emails, both Epstein's emails and Ehud Barak's emails. His goals are to get America to bomb Syria for Israel, then to bomb Iran for Israel, then to procure cyber weapons for Israel. To say that he's not connected to Israel is to lie to you, unmitigated lie. And in fact, when someone tells you that Epstein is not connected to Israel, understand that that person is working for Israel. Now they might know it or not know it, they might be part of ABC or CNN, and they don't consciously, some of them consciously think it, but most of them don't. If you ask them, they'd be like, oh, that's outrageous. What do you mean I work for Israel? And then you say, well, you see all of this evidence proving without a shadow, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that Epstein worked with the Israeli government and for the Israeli government. And they will say to you, no, you're not allowed to say that because that is an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. But all of Israel's discussing it, so it can't be anti-Semitic. And Netanyahu and Naftali Bennett are discussing it, right? So how could it be that Israelis are allowed to discuss that issue, but the Americans are all banned? And why are we banned? What does it mean to be banned? Because that same reporter will then write a story about you if you say things that are true, and will try to cancel your career. And they'll say, oh, it's anti-Semitic, Jew hater, conspiracy theorist, cancel them, outrageous radicals. They should never be allowed to work in media. They're hateful, they're bigots, right? Well then, brother, you're not a reporter. You're a literal propagandist for Israel, whether you know it or you don't. So, and I love Drop Site News for revealing all of this. Great work by Ryan Grimm and Jeremy Scahill and everybody at Drop Site News, brilliant work. Now, I don't know about and I don't know the contours of Epstein's deal with Israel, right? So I can't tell you, oh yeah, he went and talked to Mossad agent X and they came up with a plan to rape American underage girls and use that as leverage and blackmail, etc. That we don't have yet, okay? We're clear about it. but did he work with Israel and have an enormous amount of power within Israel and its government and do all of these deals on behalf of Israel so they get cyber weapons, America dragged into war, etc.? No question. That is proven now beyond any doubt. So Epstein definitely worked with Israel. Anyone telling you otherwise is lying to you on behalf of Israel.
Listen, when I'm on Counterpoints and I'm in a 2v1 debate with two Zionists, Josh Hammer and Alan Dershowitz, and both of them do not want the release of the Epstein files, that should tell you something.
No question. We'll put it up on tyt.com/press. You should watch that.
Yeah.
Because both of them, as Israel first as it gets, both Dershowitz and Josh Hammer.
Dershowitz pretends like he wants the release of the Epstein files, but namely because he wants to attack the survivors. He doesn't even hide that.
Yeah, I know. Throughout the entire interview, Anna didn't have to do much. She did great, but they revealed themselves total mask off. Dershowitz is like, I want the files released so we can get the names of the victims, and there should be lawsuits against them. Okay, he says some of them, not all of them, but some of them. Oh, the accusations are unacceptable. And he pretends like that. People who are trying to protect the victims are being McCarthyite against who? The poor perpetrators. And he says everybody who palled around with Epstein and loved Epstein and said they're not all guilty. Now, some of them are guilty, but a lot of them are wonderful human beings protecting beloved Israel. And the victims should be attacked with lawsuits, and they should none will get them.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you watch the interview. It's obvious they hate the idea of these Epstein files being released. Why? Because they're looking to protect Israel. And that's why Mark Levin and Ben Shapiro were like, don't release the Epstein files. And then once Trump turned around on it, they were like, oh, okay, it's cleaned up. Yeah, it's okay, you can release them now. It's so obvious, turned around on a dime. Look, these Israel first people go pound sand, okay? And we have to get rid of every person connected to Epstein in our government, because our government is supporting this vile stuff right now. Look, they're the ones who gave him a sweetheart deal. They're the ones who killed the camera, made the guards go off break. There are still traitors inside our government that helped do God knows what with Epstein in that jail cell, that helped to get him off. Why did they do that? Who do they work for? They certainly don't work for America, and very, very, very likely they work for Israel.
All right, we'll be right back.
All right, I'm gonna read some of these blinds, so God help me. Let's go to Super Chat. Replicant Android K says, good to see Anna. Whenever Netanyahu, Ben Gvir, or ITF appear, and my IDF, I assume he means, my blood boils. I wanna smash my TV in hysterical disgust. TYT, please minimize his vile, grotesque face polluting every broadcast. I'm glad Marjorie Greene finally woke up. I pray that anti-Zionist PACs rises strong to challenge this diabolical regime. Their corruption and cruelty are unmatched, yet US leaders still bow to them. Why is America that blind with Israel while Saudi, Qatar, and even France are turning their backs on this, what he says is a demonic state? TYT will expose the hypocrisy and stop normalizing their evil presence. If they silence us, we come stronger back with tsunami force. So guys, at this point, a political revolution has begun, not a physical one. And tons of the right wingers are now have woken up and realized that we're not in America first at all. Our government is totally Israel first. And they're pretty pissed about it. And the independents now totally realize it, and the Democrats already realized it. So then the only question is, what's gonna happen? This is not a left or right issue. This is now the people versus the elites. The elites who run our government and the elites who represent Israel and not us. And those are facts. And so all the whining and crying from corporate media isn't gonna change any of that. And soon they'll be ridden out of town. Again, all of this is just peaceful, in normal ways. Ratings drop, politicians lose elections, etc. Replicant also wrote, in my opinion, and it's very high time on behalf of Palestinian lives, there needs to be an arrest warrant for Biden and Trump administration. Sorry, but not. It has come to that point for these Holocaust enablers of the Middle East. Like, of course, that's not going to happen, right? But did Biden work for Israel? Of course he did. He gave them everything they wanted. They gave him $11 million throughout his career, the Israeli lobby did. He was totally bought by Israel, worked for Israel. Anyone telling you otherwise is lying on behalf of Israel and Biden. Anthony Aguilar writes in a couple of times, bless his heart. He said, Mike Huckabee is an Israeli agent. He literally watched the Palestinians being shot in Gaza at a GHF site, and Anthony would know that, and smiled. He's a monster. Yes, Huckabee is one of the worst people in the country. By the way, you know what? Good news. If he wants to escape justice, just stay in Israel, okay, and convert to Judaism or whatever excuse you want. And you know you love Israel, just stay there. Anthony Aguilar says, we the people, I go to DC every week for 2 days. I live in North Carolina. I knock on doors and meet with members of Congress, the House and the Senate. It's our house, it's our country. We can make a difference, and some listen. Guys, take your government back. Never vote for anyone who takes money from the Israeli lobby. They are obviously working for a different government. And the Cory Bookers of the world are comical. Oh, no, it's I just only took $860,000. Oh, I'm not gonna tell you about the blind money that's coming in and the super PAC money that's coming in. And it's only $1 million in bribes I took from Israel. I mean, I totally served them 99% of the time, but. All right, back on TYT, Jen Canana with you guys. Just a couple of comments here from Super Chat and from members, and then we got important stories coming up for you with fights within the Republican Party. Bright Lights in a Dark Room writes in on Super Chat. I love Cenk Uygur and his signature catchphrase. Of course. By the way, that's not like it's a catchphrase, I guess, but that's something I used to say in my real life, and then I just started saying it on air. But you enjoyed? Great, wonderful, appreciate it. Sid Life 365 says, it's evident that Israel is the primary force preventing peace with Palestine by pursuing border expansion and consistently disrupting every brokered agreement. Well, there's no question about that. That is a factual statement. They have broken every ceasefire. They've broken this ceasefire. They've already killed 269 Palestinians since the ceasefire.
They killed just a few days ago in strikes in Gaza. They killed 24 people. There's supposed to be a ceasefire in Lebanon. Israel just bombed Beirut. I mean, they allegedly took out someone, a chief of staff for Hezbollah.
They reserve the right to murder anyone in any country if they feel it's a slight threat of a hangnail for any Israeli citizen at all. And we're all told that the people they murdered are the terrorists, but the murderers are not terrorists, they're special allies. Last one, ABAG6N says, with thanks, appreciation, and love to TYT channel and all its employees. We appreciate you. We'll be right back. All right, guys, now let's go to YouTube members. Donovo Albertini says, for many years I used to relax watching and listening to Mark Levin until I saw and listened carefully. And he wants the death of Arabs or Gaza people. I'm mixed Arab and my family were Muslims.
How did you ever relax while listening to Mark Levin? Even if you agreed with what he was saying, homeboy looks like he sounds like he's gonna have a heart attack any minute. He's always yelling.
Yeah. Look, I yell a lot, so I, live in a glass house.
Which is why I would never listen to you to relax. Okay, like I'm sorry.
Some people do find it cathartic, but I, on top of all the other things, that voice, like, you hate the Arabs. The real problem is bigots. Bigots against Jews. Bigots against Arabs are great. We should promote them. I love killing Arabs, but I'm really worried about bigotry. Okay, sure you are, Mark, whatever. Anyways, good to see that Mark Levin and Ben Shapiro, I think, are done. I mean, how many Israel first guys are there in the country? like 28 or 280, and they all live in Washington, right?
I mean, they even rolled out a bearded version of Ben Shapiro, and he was done on arrival.
Yeah. You can keep going, guys. It's a free country. Keep doing your show, but no, like I don't know anyone more despised in media than Mark Levin by all quarters. Right.
Sometimes I do listen to his show to laugh. Like,
I mean,
he's like screaming into the ether. It's kind of entertaining.
Yeah, okay, if that's your type of thing. But like, and you know what he's gonna say every time. Every show is about how Israel is the greatest thing in the world. We should murder all the Muslims, and America owes Israel, and America should serve Israel.
Not only that, I mean, look, he says some of the most vicious things I've ever heard against people who have been incredibly friendly to Israel throughout their entire political careers, but they said one tiny thing that Mark Levin didn't like, and he's on a warpath. Like Megyn Kelly's a perfect example of that.
Yeah, no, he's a one-man wrecking crew for his own side. So let him keep going,
exactly.
Okay? But also, Mark, we get it. You love Israel, you love genocide. Good news, Israel exists. Why don't you move there? No, I'm gonna do propaganda here. I want Americans to pay for all the wars. I don't want Israel to pay for it. I don't want Israel to pay for anything. I'm gonna make Americans pay for it. Okay, all right, brother, all right. Samurai Champion says, and by the way, the fact that corporate media thinks that Mark Levin is illegitimate, but Tucker Carlson is legitimate. I'm sorry, Tucker, the reverse. That Tucker Carlson is illegitimate when he's like the largest show on the right. Mark Levin represents the real right wing. Well, you'd have to be a moron, an absolute moron to believe that.
Yeah.
If that's your assessment of current state of media in America, you really are the dumbest person in media. And that represents almost all of corporate media.
Yeah, Tucker Carlson is the single most influential conservative in media right now, and for good reason.
And if you watch corporate media, those idiots are like, he's a fringe character. The real representatives of America First are Ben Shapiro and Mark Levin. Guys, you're betraying yourself. You're making it super obvious. Like no one in their right mind would ever think that. What you're basically saying is we're doing propaganda for Israel. You keep going, guys. It stopped working, so it doesn't matter. Samurai Champion says America First should be about policies that actually help the American people, which is a socialist, and about democratic rights for everybody with inclusion of better legal immigration. So that's your opinion, and I hear you, and I might agree with a lot of what you said. My guess is a lot of the right are not going to agree with what you said. God bless. Back on TYT, Jen and Anna with you guys, more news.
Why don't we check in on Marjorie Taylor Greene, who made a shocking decision to resign from Congress just this past weekend.
I refuse to be a battered wife, hoping it all goes away and gets better. I'll be resigning from office with my last day being January 5th, 2026. And I look forward to seeing many of you again sometime in the future. May God bless you all, and may God bless America.
Now that Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene has announced her resignation from Congress, she did so last Friday. The real question is what comes next, and more importantly, what fueled her decision to do this? Cenk, was it threats against her life, maybe by a foreign country?
It's really hard to tell, and so I think that she's definitely gonna make a comeback. The only question is how. Is it media? Is it politics? So, and should she stay in Congress? We're asking you that question as well, and I have a strong opinion on that.
So her sudden announcement shocked many, including myself, and Trump's response to all of it has been fascinating. He kind of flip-flops from mocking her to praising her, but there has been a lot of mockery. So this is what he had to say on Saturday as he was speaking to reporters.
Are you willing to forgive Congresswoman Taylor Greene? Forgive for what? No, I just disagreed with her philosophy. She started backing perhaps the worst Republican congressman in our history, just stupid person named Massey. And I said, go your own way. And once I left her, she resigned because he would never have survived a primary. But I think she's a nice person.
She is the single largest small dollar fundraiser for the Republican Party, so interesting. I'm sure the people in her district in Georgia actually care about the well-being of Israel way more than the well-being of the American people and of themselves and their own families. But anyway, moving on Truth Social, he had some other thoughts, including calling her Marjorie Trader Brown instead of Marjorie Taylor Greene, calls out her so-called plummeting poll numbers, not wanting to deal with a primary challenger with a strong Trump endorsement, blah, blah, blah. You guys get the point. He then proceeded to call her a lowlife on Sunday in another lengthy post. And the decision was also slammed by some Democrats who you would expect to say negative things about Marjorie Taylor Greene. Let's just give you one example. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez wrote that Marjorie Taylor Greene is carefully planning her departure just 1 to 2 days after her pension kicks in. Greene is saying a lot, but her actions have not backed up the rhetoric. For all her talk, she's still voting with them to gut health care. Now, look, AOC out of all people knows what it's like to cave into pressure. And I don't see Marjorie Taylor Greene caving into pressure when it comes to her very vocal criticism of the US alliance with Israel. And she was the only Republican who was willing to go on the record and call what's happening in Gaza a genocide. She totally went against her own party by calling out their unwillingness to extend the Affordable Care Act subsidies, and also called out her own party for failing to have a replacement healthcare plan if they wanted to repeal the Affordable Care Act. So like, I get what she's saying in that Marjorie Taylor Greene has voted in a way that I don't agree with, but in her final months in office, she's actually been doing and saying the right things, and I'm gonna give her credit for that.
No, I'll be harsher than you. So AOC is right about the pension part. Okay, fair is fair. But no, otherwise, in the last 2-3 months, Marjorie Taylor Greene is for cutting all funding to Israel. I'm not sure AOC is.
She's definitely not.
Okay, Marjorie Taylor Greene has called it a genocide. I'm not sure AOC has.
I think she has.
I'm not sure because she's certainly not making a big deal out of it. So if you'd like to come out of the witness protection program on this issue, then maybe I could take your opinions a little bit more seriously. So I don't see you at all in media. I see Marjorie Taylor Greene all over media saying how we shouldn't be ruled by Israel. But you're hiding in your wherever corner you are. Oh no, establishment, don't hate me, okay? And Marjorie Taylor Greene just co-sponsored a bill with Ro Khanna to lower drug prices. Where are you at? You didn't co-sponsor that bill.
Also joined forces with Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie in applying the correct amount of pressure to get the Epstein files voted on in Congress.
And Marjorie Taylor Greene was at the press conference, AOC wasn't. Why wouldn't you be at the press conference to release the Epstein files? Why is that not a layup? Marjorie Taylor Greene almost single-handedly blocked a bill that would have made it illegal to boycott Israel throughout the country, okay? So that is action. That is specific action she took and was successful on. So until I see AOC being half as aggressive as Marjorie Taylor Greene in protecting American sovereignty and criticizing Israel and its genocide, then maybe I'll take you more seriously, okay? But this old game of like, she's a Republican, you should hate all Republicans. I'm tired of that game, okay?
Yeah, it's gotten us nowhere.
I care about the issues and the policies.
So look, we want to be accurate and we also want to be fair. So just a quick fact check. AOC has referred to what's happening in Gaza as a genocide. In a 2024 speech, she said, quote, "If you want to know what an unfolding genocide looks like, open your eyes." So
okay, I guess, right? I mean,
but she hasn't been as vociferous as
at all.
Yeah.
Let's keep it real. I mean, when AOC wants to be a fire breather, it's not like she doesn't know how.
Right.
I don't see any fire here. I see her hiding nonstop. Last thing on this, Marjorie Taylor Greene was actually fighting Trump, and she was calling out Trump. So you are happy that the biggest fighter against Trump on the Republican side is leaving? Because I hate all Republicans. All right, whatever. That's a dumb strategy. Sorry.
So let's move on to whether Marjorie Taylor Greene is considering a future in politics. Now, Time Magazine had posted this. Marjorie Taylor Greene has privately told allies that she has considered running for president in 2028, according to people close to her. Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene has shot that down, saying that Time claims sources told them I'm running for president in 2028, which means this is a complete lie and they made it up because they can't even quote the names of the people who they claim said it. I'm not running for president and never said I wanted to, and have only laughed about it when anyone would mention it. Now, she also denied the possibility of running for a Senate seat. But look, I'm not gonna take her word for it because this is usually what happens. You'll have various political figures claim they're not seeking higher office and then they run for higher office. I don't know why they do that, but that is known, like I know that happens and it happens often. So I'm curious what you think, Cenk.
Yeah, look, she probably will run for higher office. I don't know, but is that what normally happens? Yes. I don't know why, I'm with Anna, I don't know why they bother lying about it. Okay, then we'll judge her when she's running for office and we'll judge her based on all of her policies. And we disagree with probably 80% of her policies. Okay, and by the way, on the policies we disagree with, I'm gonna say something that I know the cancel folks on the left can't stand. So what? Okay, so by the way, she's said bad things about Muslims in the past. So what? Okay, so how's she doing today? She's doing better than 99% of Congress on that issue, not the other issues, right? So don't come at me with, no, I already canceled her. I'm closed-minded, so I don't care what good she's doing now. I want to hurt her anyway. And by the way, then also at the same time, help Trump and help Israel and help the genocide. I don't think that that's helpful at all. So look, I think she should stay. We're asking you guys in a poll, tyt.com. Should she stay or leave? Well, why do I think she should stay? In fact, I even challenged her to a debate on whether she should stay or leave, and I'd take stay. So is it because, that's it, I agree with everything Marjorie Taylor Greene says? No. I still, again, disagree at 80% of her policies, at least, is my guess. And look at that, beautiful. Most of our audience is saying stay, okay? So
far, yeah.
Yeah, so far, and it's just got started. Okay, and so guys, we need every fighter against Israeli interest in Congress, and there's like 3 of them. And so now we're gonna lose one of them? It's a disaster. That's not good at all. Yeah. And when I say 3 of them, you say, well, that's super unfair, and you can't just say
no, there's 3 of them.
Yeah.
That's accurate. That's literally accurate. It is.
Look, I gotta say it. Sorry, I gotta say it. I don't know where Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar are. I don't know where they are. So in the beginning, they were pretty good. I don't know if they think it'll be counterproductive to help.
I think that's the impression that they have. So I don't deny for a second that they're on the right side of this issue, but having 2 Muslim women fight on behalf of the Palestinians in a country that has absorbed anti-Muslim propaganda for many, many decades could be counterproductive.
Yeah, no, so I get it if that's what they're thinking. And by the way, we're giving the most favorable light to what they're doing, in my opinion. But wait a minute, I'm a guy who was born Muslim. I'm from a Muslim background and I do it. And it's not counterproductive at all. In fact, what happens is a lot of people go, yeah, I like that Cenk's sticking up for America. Hey, you know what? It turns out Muslims love America. Maybe we could try that, right? So my point isn't to just take them on. My point is to say, if Marjorie Taylor Greene is on the front line of fighting to defund Israel in the middle of a genocide, and you're in the back line or the middle line, don't criticize her on the way out.
I agree.
No. The sister came to help on a massively important issue. It doesn't get any more important than a genocide. I'm gonna take all help in ending a genocide, not complicated. And if you're in Congress, you get a bigger microphone. Because corporate media, the minute she's out the door, they'll make Matt Gaetz her. Oh, she's irrelevant, who cares? That's it, we're never talking about that anti-Semite again. If she stays in Congress, they can't not put a mic in front of her, right? So I think it's a mistake, I don't like it. I think she should have stayed and fought. It also looks like she's running, I hate that visual.
Same.
And lastly, Randy Fine tweets out, 1 anti-Semite down, 1 to go. And I'm like, no. So now they're gonna use all their resources against Tom Massey. and stay and fight, beat them in a primary, beat them to a poll politically, then come out of that and do whatever you want, right? So I don't like that she's leaving at all.
Yeah, I agree with you. All right, one final story for you before we wrap up the main show for the day. I want to talk a little bit about a new feature on X, which I think is fantastic, and it's been revealing so far, that's for sure. Elon Musk has just enabled a pretty fantastic new location transparency feature on X. And it turns out that a ton of Trump supporting MAGA accounts aren't actually operated out of the United States, Cenk.
That's so weird. Turns out there's Israeli bots and trolls. I was led to believe that was a conspiracy theory,
Yeah.
So now, of course, as with anything exposing Israel, like Grok did, they're gonna have to fix it.
Well, it's not just Israel that got exposed, and there's a DHS angle to this story that you do not want to miss. But first, let's focus on the MAGA accounts. So look, I think a lot of people already suspected this. It's nice to have some confirmation, but a lot of the all caps, ultra MAGA, America first, like X accounts aren't based in the United States at all. So let's start with-
Of course.
Okay, let's start with Ultra MAGA Trump 2028. Turns out that account is based in Nigeria. By the way, the right-wing Cope page, also not based in the United States. It's based in North America, which means Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, these are all Israel. It's not Nigerians or Canadians.
How do you know that?
Okay, because all these accounts, all they do is like, no. When Trump is siding with Israel, that's the real America first position, okay? Marjorie Taylor Greene's a traitor. Tom Massey's a traitor, dude.
Okay,
right?
But I wonder about whether or not this feature takes VPNs into account. Because with a VPN, you can just lie about where you're located. So that's just-
That's a good point.
Yeah, and I haven't gotten any clarity on that. Like all the reporting on this like avoids answering that question about VPNs. But anyway, let's just keep going. Here's another example, American Voice, who is American Guy X, based in India. In fact, a lot of accounts are apparently based in India.
Most of the Israeli bots are based in India. That's why a lot of people joke around about how the Israelis live in India.
American, that account, based in Pakistan.
America with an ego, based in Pakistan.
So good. Now let's pivot to the DHS scandal, which I think is a really interesting part of this story. So soon after X rolled out its location transparency feature, which revealed where accounts were operating out of, like which countries, it was briefly suspended. And many X users suspect that it had a little something to do with the DHS account initially showing that it was operating out of Israel. So Gen X girl, I love her account. I follow her. She does a really good job with her sleuthing. She posts on the left-hand side, the screenshot that shows that the DHS or Homeland Security account was based in Tel Aviv, Israel. X activated locations last night, which showed US government accounts like DHS opened and operating from Israel. Then 20 minutes later, they deactivated the feature. And today, government accounts are exempt from the location feature.
Why would they be exempt? They would be the easiest ones. They're in Arlington, Virginia. They're in Fairfax, Virginia. They're in Washington, D.C. That should be a layup. Why are we hiding where our government is based?
Super fascinating stuff, right?
Okay, now, and why is the DHS, I don't know what kind of error that is, but why in the world are they based in Israel? Department of Homeland Security, that's actually a little bit telling on yourself.
So at first, DHS put out this like cheesy, trolly statement. It wasn't even a statement, they put this out in response to people freaking out about the Tel Aviv, Israel connection to DHS. So it's just a photo of Donald Trump looking shocked. No one was amused by that, including Trump supporters. And so after the story blew up further, DHS finally came out with an official denial. I'm just gonna put my cards on the table. I don't believe their denial at all. I think they're lying. But nonetheless, they put out the denial, which quote tweeted Nikita Beer, who is the head of product over at X. So Nikita Beer said, this is fake news. Location was not available on any gray check account at any point. Now, not only are there screenshots of this, by the way, there are also videos, like people did a screen capture of video of them clicking back and forth and like showing that it was definitely true.
No, Anna, it never happened.
I know.
If the government says it never happened, well then, and if government says war is peace and peace is war, well then it must be.
So the Homeland Security account quote tweeted that and said, "I can't believe we have to say this, but this account has only ever been run and operated from the United States. Screenshots are easy to forge, videos are easy to manipulate. Thank you for your attention to this matter." You know what's also easy to manipulate and has been the case for decades until now? The American people when it comes to the US relationship with Israel. But people are awake to that now. So these lies are harder to, get us to believe. So while Grok isn't always accurate, it did provide some interesting claims when people asked whether or not the screenshots people were sharing were authentic. I'll give you an example. The US Department of Homeland Security is headquartered in Washington, D.C. with international offices, including in Tel Aviv, Israel. A short-lived X feature briefly showed the DHS government account as based in Israel, possibly due to IP geolocation or login location, before being removed for inaccuracies. The department itself is US based. But here's another really interesting exchange. Is this screenshot real, Grok? Because we keep getting told that it's manipulated. Grok responds, "The screenshot is real. It captured X's brief about this account feature rollout on November 22nd, 2025, showing DHS government created in Tel Aviv, Israel via a 2008 IP, then it shares the IP address that's linked to Israeli ISP partner communications. The feature was paused due to inaccuracies."
Sure.
Yeah.
So look, guys, the actual Department of Homeland Security is, of course, in America, right?
Is it?
But their social media account might be run out of Israel. And why? Because the messaging for not just Department of Homeland Security, but let's be honest, for the entire US government, both under Biden and Trump, have been run out of Israel.
Yep.
And so we did a story earlier today for you guys about that, about how there's low-level staffers, including the advisor to Ambassador Huckabee, who unilaterally decide that American policy doesn't apply anymore, and they will doctor reports or bury reports that criticize Israel. They will change reports to say the opposite of our position. Instead of a two-state solution, they say no, America wants Israel to have Judea and Samaria, that's the occupied territories. So there are a lot of people inside our government that actually work for Israel and that message whatever Israel wants as the official US position. So whether this particular account is run out of social media in Tel Aviv or not, it doesn't really matter. What matters is you can all see with your eyes that the US government is totally working for the Israeli government.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter who you elect, you're gonna get the same result no matter what. And that's what the American people are absolutely sick and tired of. So the people in corporate media can pretend this never happened. They could pretend, oh no, the people on X that seem to all be with the same talking points are true Americans that happen to live in Pakistan and Nigeria. And they all support Israel and they're the real MAGA. And all of the rest of you guys are fake and oh, Tucker Carlson is unpopular, Young Turks is unpopular. No, you guys don't, the polling is all wrong. Everything is wrong. Remember everyone, corporate media and our politicians tell us, bow your head to Israel. But if you say that, then you should be canceled.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're saying it. They work for Israel and we're sick of it. Absolutely sick of it. Okay, when we come back, I'm gonna do interviews with two people in the Biden administration that left for exactly this reason. They said they got tired of us constantly appeasing a foreign government committing a genocide. So let's talk to those two heroes when we return. back on TYT. Guys, we're gonna do an amazing interview for you guys, but I wanna just give a real quick comment from Super Chat. Anthony Aguilar wrote in, Representative Omar has been censured. She's a co-sponsor of Tlaib's HR 876 to recognize the genocide. Go see your congressperson and demand that they sign on to HR 876. So look, on Omar being censured, that's of course true, and I would have the same attitude that Marjorie Taylor Greene had about being censured. So what? Do it again. Who cares? I don't recognize your legitimacy. You can censure me all day. In fact, if you're not censoring me, then I obviously haven't fought enough. Randy Fine was not censured, even though he's called for mass death and Holocaust to the Palestinians. So Congress is corrupt. The American government is corrupt, and they work for Israel. So yes, everybody should join on to HR 876. And this show is the revolution. It's a part of the TYT network, and that is part of the revolution to gain American sovereignty back. And the way that you do that is that you get rid of Israel's influence in this country, and you fight like hell, whether you're on the right or the left. We demand that our representatives serve America and not another country, which is a perfect lead into our next two guests. Josh Paul and Tariq Abbas join us. They formed a group called A New Policy. We're going to talk about what that is in a second. But Josh left the State Department in protest during the Biden years because of the Gaza policy. And Tariq did the same for the Education Department. So Josh and Tariq, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Oh, no problem.
Thanks, Jake.
Yeah. So Josh, let me start with you. So why did you leave the State Department?
So I was working in something called the Bureau of Political Military Affairs, which is responsible for US arms exports and security assistance. And I left October 18th, 2023, at which point 3,500 people had already been killed in Gaza by American weapons. And I left because of the scale and scope of the harm that was being done, but also because when I put up my hand and said, this is wrong, this is harmful to America's interest, this is morally wrong, this is illegal, there was absolutely no willingness on the part of the Biden administration, the Blinken State Department, to even pause for a second to consider that. So I refused to be a part of it, and I stepped down.
So let's talk about that a little bit more, Josh. So what happens specifically inside the State Department? Like there's procedures for example, human rights violations and what the State Department does with that. So was Blinken and were Blinken and Biden basically going outside of regular procedures? And is that what frustrated you?
Yeah, there's always been a double standard when it comes to Israel, and that's been a long-lasting problem. So, for example, there's a law, the Leahy law, which says we can't provide US security assistance to gross human rights violators. When it comes to Israel, there's always been a different process for that, a higher level of authorization needed to move the ball forward. And that's why no Israeli unit has ever been prohibited from receiving US assistance, despite a lengthy record of human rights violations. In the context of Gaza, the entire process that was supposed to be there for arms transfers reviews was flipped on its head by the Biden administration. It's supposed to be a bottom-up process where everyone looks at the policies, looks at the legal concerns, and then eventually maybe gets to yes. In this case, it was Blinken essentially saying, you will get to yes, you will approve these weapons today, you will approve whatever Israel requests. And that's not only highly abnormal, it's highly illegal.
Yeah, they work for Israel. I mean, this is so obvious. The only people who don't see that is corporate media. And so corporate media also works for Israel, so that makes sense. So look, no ally has as many human rights violations as Israel does. And because of what's happened, the genocide in Gaza, it's not even close. They've lapped every other ally, right, combined. And so when you say, even so, we're never going to sanction them, and even so, it requires a higher level authorization, aren't you basically admitting that our government works for the Israeli government? Because like Canada's a special ally, UK's a special ally, they're as good an allies as we get, but you don't need higher level authorization to sanction them or criticize them, do you, Josh?
Well, I think, no, first of all, you don't need a higher level authorization to sanction any other country in the world. But I think when you talk about the billions of our taxpayer dollars that are going to Israel, the weapons, the harm that we're doing, and of course the diplomatic harm we're doing to ourselves and to the entire international system, I think the question you have to ask is, this clearly isn't in the service of the American people or the American national interest.
No, it's obviously not. They're selling us out. So Tariq, let's talk about the education department. So tell me why you left there.
Plain and simple, I had to pick between my title and my integrity, and I picked my integrity 100 out of 100 times. It was pretty clear from the very beginning. I was a political appointee. I served at the pleasure of the president. I represented the Biden-Harris administration, and there was an immediate unwillingness to acknowledge the humanity of Palestinian life. When we saw a Palestinian child get stabbed in his home, when we saw Palestinian college students get gunned down in the streets because they were wearing keffiyehs and speaking Arabic, the Department of Education was nearly silent. The secretary did not do nearly enough. We had numerous conversations on the inside. And it was what was clear to me, both as a representative of the government, but also as a Palestinian American, was that my own humanity was being sidelined, and someone needed to speak out. Someone needed to say what was being unwilling to be talked about inside the administration. And so a few weeks after Josh left, I did the same, and I never looked back.
Yeah, so now through the Biden and Trump administrations, Israel has destroyed every college and university in Gaza. They've destroyed almost all of the schools in Gaza. And of course, our education department and our State Department has done nothing but kiss their ass while they do these horrific war crimes. So, but Tariq, we hear from time to time, oh, no, it's okay. Biden is kinder and more empathetic, and he's such an empathetic guy. And so he, like maybe mean old Republicans might side with Israel, but Biden, he's gotta have American interests, and he's just being warm-hearted, right? Is that the Biden that you saw when you were working there?
It's not, and I'll say that the empathy extended only so far, and it stopped short of Palestinians. And what I'd say to the people that would say that Republicans are the ones that won't acknowledge Palestinian life, well, I'd call Joe Biden an old guard Republican as well. What we are witnessing and what we have witnessed when it comes to the destruction of both Palestinian life and Palestinian education systems is wholly a genocide and a scholasticide, plain and simple. This has been systematic destruction of the Palestinian history in Gaza, and it has been designed to completely uproot the historical significance of an entire people. It is wrong on every level, and the fact that Joe Biden was the architect of everything that happened, the financier of everything that we witnessed, and refused to do anything, allowed for what the Trump administration has done since Donald Trump won the election. And I would go as far as to say is Joe Biden is the reason that Donald Trump has become president and has been able to do everything that he has done, not just to the Palestinian people, but also to the academic system and our education department's dismantling over the last 10 months.
Yeah, Joe Biden is among the worst of us. First of all, the reason he did all this is AIPAC was his #1 donor throughout his 200-year career. They gave him $11 million, and that one is not hyperbole, well over 11 million that we know of, let alone the dark money and the super PACs, etc. And so he totally worked for Israel and did not work for the American people. He betrayed us. And then he opened the door for Trump to do even more, because he raised the bar. Like even all of these atrocities and genocide is good enough for Democrats, so you can do more, Donald Trump. And he in every way aided and abetted the war crimes of Israel. He proudly declared himself a Zionist. And then not only that, of course, he had no business running. He handed the country to Trump. And he didn't mind doing that because he's egotistical, and he's a terrible, slimy politician. Okay, that's my opinion. All right, so Josh, tell me about new policy. What is it, and what are you guys trying to accomplish?
So what we are trying to accomplish is a change in American politics when it comes to US policy towards Israel and Palestine. Look, I know from the people I talked to in the State Department before and since I left, and Tarek and I both know from talking to officials, elected officials, congressmen, senators, that what we face here is not a policy problem. the vast majority of people who you speak to behind closed doors will tell you what we're doing is wrong, what we're doing is harmful to America's own interests, what we're doing is against America's own laws. But I can't say that publicly. That's because what we have in this country is not a policy problem, it's a political problem. And to address a political problem, you need a political solution. That's what a new policy is, through lobbying, advocacy, and campaign finance in support of candidates for office who are going to shift the dial, who are going to move the ball forward, who are going to stand up both for American law, American interests, and for humanity to that extent. That is what we are here to do, to provide that infrastructure and that real political power to shift American politics so we can get this into a better place.
So Josh, why can't people actually stand up for America? Why must they bow their heads to Israel when they're inside the US government? Is it because of pro-Israel thugs that are in the government that would have them canceled? Is it because of pro-Israel thugs in corporate media who would then smear them as anti-Semitic and try to ruin their lives? So that's my opinion, but I'm looking at it from the outside. You tell me from the inside, what are the pressures inside the US government to loyally serve Israel instead of our country?
Well, I think thugs is the right word, because at the end of the day, you have a lot of people who are afraid to say what they know to be true because they know that, or they fear that it will be the end of their careers if they do it. And I'm not just talking about career civil servants, I'm talking about political appointees, I'm talking about elected officials. And that's what we've got to break. That's the incentive structures or the punishment structures, I would say, that have been taking our politics and our policies so far off track. And yeah, there is a degree of thuggishness to it. In fact, when you look at some of the tactics that AIPAC uses with congressional staff, with elected officials, it's downright thuggishness, and that's not in America's interest. But if we're going to fix that, we have to create new incentive structures. We have to make, and we're beginning to see this already, but we have to make support for change a winner, and it is becoming that in American politics. Now we have to push that through.
Yeah, so let me ask one more for you, Josh. If you're in the State Department and you decided that, you know what, you just absolutely love, you can pick any country, Estonia, Paraguay, or China, Russia, Venezuela, right? And you decided, you know what, I'm going, even though they are committing human rights violations, I'm going to bury it. I'm not going to apply the law to this country because I love this country, whichever that foreign country is. I love Estonia, so I want them to be able to commit human rights violations, and I will bend American law to their favor. And by the way, there's a State Department report. I'm going to spike it. I'm not going to let my superiors see that because I love Estonia and I don't want them to harm Estonia. So I'm just going to cover up anything from the State Department that says that. Is that illegal?
Well, first of all, you'd be out on your ass in seconds. That's not the way it works, and there's plenty of oversight and checks and balances, even within the State Department, that prevent that sort of behavior typically. The problem is when it comes to Israel, there is this overwhelming set of incentives and political pressure that essentially push through whatever Israel wants and that repress any effort at bringing it in line or in a more balanced way with American interests and with American laws. So no, that wouldn't work in any other context.
But for Israel, it's okay. You could do anything you want. As we reported earlier in the show, there's advisor to the ambassador, our ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, and he is spiking reports coming out of the State Department. He is changing the reports and changing American policy unilaterally and saying that America is in favor of Israel having Judea and Samaria, which is definitely not American policy. But something you would get fired for and might even get arrested for if you did it for another country, because it's Israel. No, he's celebrated. And
let me just tell you something on that, Cenk. I mean, there's a Inspector General of the State Department just put out a confidential report that the Washington Post has reported on, and it says that if the State Department was going to start working through the list of Israeli human rights violations from the last couple of years, it would be a multi-year process just to work through that backlog. But guess what? The State Department is probably never going to start even working through those reports.
Because the people at the State Department work for Israel and not America. This is super obvious to anyone who isn't bought by the Israelis. Okay, Tariq, how is new policy going to win? help me understand like the strategy and the details of how you wind up supporting candidates or anyone else that is actually for America and not for any other country.
I mean, plain and simple, we're going to beat AIPAC at their own game. At the end of the day, American politics runs on money. But AIPAC, the mask has come down. Everyone has seen what they stand for and how they're actually working against American interests, working against American politicians, and working against the American people. So the way that you win is by building a systematic effort, real infrastructure in politics to be able to support American politicians that are going to actually fight for American interests, that are going to be America first. And I say that almost tongue in cheek, but we need Democrats and Republicans that are going to actually prioritize the interests of their communities, the rising costs for healthcare, the lack of nutrition assistance, the lack of education infrastructure, above sending billions of dollars to a foreign government that uses those dollars to harm children, to destroy schools, and to undermine our own national security. It doesn't make any sense. And we don't have to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to do it. We have the American people on our side. And if AIPAC has 5 million members, I guarantee you there are 50 million Americans who feel increasingly strongly against what AIPAC stands for and want to support candidates. So what we're doing is we're vetting those candidates. We're vetting them not just for their policy alignment on these issues, we're vetting them for their actual capability to be able to win elections. And when you go to our website and see candidates that align with your values, you can support them directly through our campaign finance infrastructure so that when they get that money that you are going to give them anyway through Act Blue, that money is now going to say, this is about Palestine, and it's going to tell Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries and the DNC and the DS. It's going to tell everyone that actually there is real money that is going to replace whatever AIPAC has been doing, whatever those billionaire Republican donors that have been trying to control your politics. It is going to tell them that there is actually an infrastructure to support better policy positions, and you don't have to be bought and paid for by a special interest lobby that is making you work against your own communities.
Yeah, so I've been saying Americans first. I ran it by a conservative we had on the other day on this program, Dan McKnight, who represents Defend the Guard. He's like, oh, I like that a lot, right? So it gets rid of some of the baggage of America first. Some people love it, some people hate it, and a lot of people are not sure exactly what it means. But Americans first is crystal clear. And who could possibly be against Americans first? Oh, right, Israel first. That demands that we all work for Israel. And then, but if we say we're occupied, they say, how dare you? You should all be canceled. Anyone who disagrees with Israel should be fired, right? But we don't control anything. Okay, well, that's your opinion. So let me understand, Tariq, a little bit more about the infrastructure. You mentioned infrastructure there. So if people go to your website, that's anewpolicy.org, anewpolicy.org. So are they going to see the candidates that are free of Israel's influence, and can they donate to them? Can they find out their policies? What do you have there?
Yeah, so if you go to anewpolicy.org, that is our primary organization. It is a lobbying organization. It's a nonprofit. You can support, you can become a member. To do this work, we need as many people, as many Americans as possible to be part of this movement. So please join us at act.anewpolicy.org/membership. If you go to our PACs page, which is our sister organization that allows us to provide that direct campaign support to candidates, that's anewpolicypac.org. You can find candidates on the website right now. We're adding new candidates every day. We have dozens more in the queue, and we've interviewed over 150 candidates to date. We're going to be talking with more every single day because there's always more people that are announcing that they're running for federal office. We want to be able to identify as many of those viable opportunities as possible so that millions of Americans have somewhere to go to support those candidates. And these are going to be candidates that both are aligned on the substance. These are candidates that are going to speak to your values and people who have the capability of really winning these elections. These are not sure things by any stretch, but with your support, they will be successful. And that's why we need to build this type of infrastructure. That's what it's going to take to be able to transform American politics away from this Israel first mentality.
Yeah, So look, on this show, we try to come up with different ideas on how to get our government back, how to get our democracy back. And it's not just about Israel. The donors have taken everything. Big pharma, big oil, defense contractors. They're robbing us blind on a daily basis. I loathe it, I can't stand it, right? And neither can the American people now, and we're fighting back. So Israel's just the tip of the iceberg. So we'll put their links down below in the description box for people to check out. Josh, we're also asking everybody, look, we're trying to do this peaceful, nonviolent, political, rhetorical revolution against this corrupted system. So what's your sense of what would be the most effective way to effectuate that revolution? What should people do to try to get their government back?
So first of all, I have to say that I think we're in a tough spot as a country. I think that we have systemic and structural issues that are going to be very hard to overcome. But for as long as we can, we've got to try and make the system work. And to do that, I think we all need to play our role in politics. We all need to stand up and speak out and bring uncomfortable conversations into uncomfortable places. I think a lot of the time people back off and don't want to have those engagements around the water cooler, don't want to be the first to say an uncomfortable truth. I think that is a very important part of what we have to do. And the other thing we have to do is organize. We have to build coalitions. Right now, there are so many stovepipes, and that's the way the system likes it. They like each of us to be in our little stovepipe, isolated from other Americans who are also struggling, other Americans who are also facing economic challenges, social challenges. We need to find those points of intersectionality that bring us together so that if I go to the Hill and I'm arguing for Palestine, I'm also arguing that Black Lives Matter. I'm also arguing that deportation shouldn't be carried on against people because of their identity. I'm also arguing that the environment matters because all of these things are connected.
Yes, and by the way, also I would argue arguing for right-wing Americans, independent Americans, every kind of American, because they're all affected by these policies. Either we have the money or Israel has the money. Either we have the money or it goes in subsidies for oil companies. And so this is in the interest of every American to stop this robbery. And so, Tariq, over to you. Okay, so what do you think? And give me, I put it this way for you. Magic bullet, you can effectuate, you can press a button and it happens. What would you do to fix the current corrupted system?
I'd take money out of politics, but that's not the world that we're in. So that's not something that I can just magically do. At the end of the day, the money is the thing that continues to corrupt how our politicians act and operate. If money was not a factor and they actually had to win votes and money couldn't influence those votes, they would actually work for Americans. They would fight for populist issues. They would not allow corruption to root itself so deeply into the infrastructure of our political system. So that's what I would do. In the meantime, we have to play within the system that we have, and that system necessitates providing that financial resources to the candidates that are going to be most aligned with you. And there are people out there who are going to fight for you, fight for your issues. We have to be able to support them. We have to give them the resources so that people can learn about them and know who they are. And I think that there are a lot of people who are ready to see real change, a lot of people who are putting their own names on the line, putting their own careers on the line to be able to fight that fight. And we have to be there to support them and to work with them every single day.
Yeah, when I ask that question, almost every person answers money in politics. So we all know what the problem is, and if you put it in a poll, it gets 80 to 90%, well, sometimes 93%, saying, yeah, get money out of politics. That's obviously the answer. And yet, weirdly, the people who get the money in politics, the politicians, and the people they pass it on to, corporate media, never mention that. And they're among the 7% who say money in politics is great. We love being bribed, and we love receiving those bribes. But you guys are conspiratorial. All of America, over 90% of America is conspiratorial. You think that politicians would just work for millions of dollars given to them? Yeah, that's what we think. We think they're almost all corrupt, at least I do. I'll speak for myself. All right, but look, a new policy is trying to give you a new batch of politicians who are not corrupted. So I love any group doing that. So good to have you guys in the fight. We appreciate you. And most of all, guys, both of you, Josh and Tariq, the fact that you left the Biden government and administration actually speaks volumes for you, because I know the Democratic circles, and in Democratic circles, that's heresy of the highest order, right? And that'll burn your career. And in the old days, it would have been unthinkable. And when you guys did it, Biden had not lost his power yet. The Wizard of Oz had not been revealed. So you were heretics, you were rebels, and you did it on behalf of the American people and to do the right thing and to do what is moral. And I can't appreciate you enough for that. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry.
All right, we appreciate you. Thanks for being on. All right, members, stay right here. I've got, they inspired me to tell you a couple of stories about, or an endless series of stories about how I've turned down money throughout my life. And then at the end, you could judge moral or a bit of an idiot. So if you're not a member yet, we do the fun story at the end, story time with Cenk. Hit the join button below on YouTube or tyt.com/join wherever you watch this program. I'll see you there in a sec.